Right, can I declare the meeting of the City Council open? This hybrid meeting is being conducted on a multi-locational basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act and the arrangements of the multi-locational meetings agreed by Council, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. Please note that today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the Council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possibility used for those images and sound recordings for webcasting or for training purposes. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours after the meeting. With those members present in the Council chamber, please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember not to get too close to the microphone and also to switch off the microphone when you have finished. For those attending the meeting remotely, can I request that you switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this hybrid meeting in the same way as in ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. For the benefit of everyone watching on the live stream, when I invite members to cast their vote remotely on any particular item, they will do so electronically using the voting facility in the chat function. The votes will be automatically counted and are recorded on the system, but individual votes are not identified on the screen, and the chat room poll is not available on the live stream for public viewing. However, I will announce the number of votes cast for or against or any abstentions before I declare the results. Those the President of the Council chamber will vote in the usual way, and a Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. I move on now to apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Jordan, Reeks, Hurricane, and there was, Rian Hells. Okay, no other apologies. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at this stage? Right, I move on to... sorry.
Just like to declare an interest on item 6, please, as I'm involved in a business in the city centre. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Marshall.
Yes, presiding member, likewise.
And the same for me.
6.
And the same for me, presiding member.
Okay. Hello. Yeah, on item 6, is it? Item? What item? Sorry? Item 6, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. No more, is there? No, I've missed. No. Right. My announcements. Obviously, we've had a Sally Manure obviously was a councillor in this council for quite a while now, representing this Rochester ward. So I think, as we normally do, can we have a minute's silence for Sally? Okay, thank you very much. If I could just say a few words about Sally. Sally was a councillor, as I said earlier on, representing the Rogerstone ward. Sally was an excellent councillor who didn't say a great deal, but when she did speak, you had to sit up and listen. She was no shrinking violet, I can assure you of that. It was a great loss to this council when she lost her seat, and even greater loss to the residents of Rogerstone, who she served extremely well. Clearly our thoughts from this council are extending to her family. Thank you. I think, Leader, you want to say something as well?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Sally, like a number of us in this chamber, myself, Councillor Thomas and others, was part of the 2012 intake here in Newport City Council. And it was an absolute pleasure to work alongside her, and we soon became firm friends. Sally was incredibly intelligent, incredibly diligent, and really dedicated to both her ward and the city of Newport. She was highly professional in her dealings and very calm, collected, and sensible. Now, colleagues, there will be colleagues in the chamber today who might not have known Sally and experienced her in the way that we did. But Sally was dedicated to making life better for everybody else. She had a true belief in social justice, which was underpinned by her unshakable Christian faith. I'm not sure whether many of you know, but in addition to the many things that Sally did, including supporting Newport Women's Forum, Sally was also a preacher. And over the years, Sally gave many of us comfort and strength with her wise words. It was very touching, and I'm sure very comforting to her family to see so many people there paying their tributes at her funeral. And I'd just like to say goodbye, Sally. You will be remembered, and you played an important role in Newport's history. Thank you.
Councillor Matthew Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Although I didn't know her particularly well, I always found her quiet and unassuming with a fascinating background. And although she only served one term, she certainly made her mark, and I know she will be sorely missed by many. Rest in peace.
I would like to be associated with the comments of both the previous speakers. Sally was a wonderful friend. She was always the first there when you had a problem. For those of us that attended the funeral, we were all absolutely astonished at the things that Sally had done and had achieved on an international scale that we knew nothing about. The woman really was a saint. May she rest in peace, and I can't say how proud I was to be associated with her. She was one of the best councillors I've ever seen, and all respect to the leader. Sally would have made a brilliant leader of this council. She always was a wise council. She always cared about everybody, and she cared about the people she represented. May she rest in peace.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Is there anybody else want to?
Councillor Whitehead on the Teams link.
Presiding Member, I've got my hand up.
All right, okay.
Yeah, some lovely words said there, rightly so. In 2012, I remember, I'm a rugby and a boxing coach. I'm not a defaulted councillor. And when I went onto the scrutiny committees, I was like, it was intimidating. It was a struggle to get my head around the old process and the old intelligentsia of it all. But Sally Weller, I sat next to her, and she kind of encouraged that. And I was like, I was wowed by her intellect, her intelligence. Besides her being just a lovely woman, there was no airs and graces. And like I say, I struggled with scrutiny, and often I still do. But it was people like Sally sitting next to her, I used to listen to her, and then she would put you on, she would feed you, and you would kind of join in, and I learned so much off her, and it shocked and saddened me. It genuinely did. I thought so much about her family since, because they will have a massive chasm in their lives now. But all I can say is thank you, Sally, wherever you may be. I'm so glad I met you. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I think there was something wrong with the microphone, so I apologise for that. Councillor Reynolds?
Sorry about that, presiding member. I was having trouble getting my camera to turn on. I didn't actually have my hand up, but as soon as you called me, I will just echo some of the comments that have been said, because I didn't know Sally as well as some people in the chamber. But having gone to the funeral this week, I was absolutely astounded, as Councillor Morris has said, that some of the achievements that Sally's made, the difference she's made to not just the Rodstone community, but communities in Tanzania. It's just absolutely incredible, some of the things that she did, and she will be massively missed. So rest in peace, Sally.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. The only reason I said that, because on the chat room, it's when Councillor Whitehead, it said same, and your name came up as same, so I naturally assumed you wanted to speak, so thank you for that.
No problem, thanks very much.
I don't think there's anybody else who wants to speak, so I think we'll move on. The minutes from the 23rd of January are before us. Are there any points of accuracy? Right, I move the minutes as a true record. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Would all those in favour please indicate by clicking on the voting application in the chat box. I will give members a short time to cast their vote. I think that's unanimous. The approval of the minutes is duly carried. I move on to police matters now. I am pleased to welcome Superintendent Jason White to the meeting.
Good evening, and thanks for another invite this evening. Just by way of just a couple of updates for the last month, for the month of January. We're obviously coming to the end of the financial year, so I just wanted to give you an update around crime levels based on the preceding month. So, commercial burglaries in Newport, we've seen a 48% reduction in commercial burglaries over the last month. Similarly, a 19% reduction in residential burglaries, which, as you can probably imagine, it can be quite sensitive and impactful upon victims. Similarly, we've seen reductions of vehicle crime, 30% month on month. Serious violence has gone down 12% over the last month. However, whilst we've seen a 30% decrease in shoplifting in the city centre ward, we've actually seen a 21% increase in shoplifting in the areas of Newport West and Newport East of the city. But we are on course for this financial year of seeing over a 2% increase in our outcome rates, our solvability rates, which is an extra 500, on course for an extra 500 crimes that's been solved by the officers here in Newport. Next week is the Serious Organised Crime Intensification Week. We do this 3 or 4 times a year. And whilst it's important to advertise and publicise that, I think it's really important just to give you a bit of a flavour of what our Serious Organised Crime team does here in Newport. So for the month of January, just as an example, for February as an example, they've arrested 19 individuals for an array of possession with intent, supply offences and money laundering. And 13 of those individuals have been charged and remanded and currently in prison as we speak. They've seized £20,000 in cash seizures. 5 vehicles have been recovered as a result of their activity, and £93,000 worth of Class A drugs has also been seized during that same period, and that's just 1 month. Coupled with that, we've then got the activity of our neighbour policing teams. So Hannah Welty, who's now gone back in the last month or so, back to Pill and Bettis. Her team has been working collaboratively with Trading Standards over the last couple of months. During that time, they've seized over £500,000 worth of illegal vapes and tobacco. They've undertaken 13 warrants in the area. 13 shops have been visited. 6 shops have actually had closure notices and been closed down as a result. The Councillor James mentioned last month around issues around drug supply, drug dealing and needles in the Shaftesbury area. I'm pleased to report back that there has been some activity this month in relation to that one particular address where a warrant was executed, and the teams are now awaiting a court date as we're looking to close that problematic premise down. In relation to problematic premises, the team have closed 3 properties that's been linked to ASB and disorder in that same period, and we've got 2 others that are awaiting dates at court for those closures to take place as well. And as recently as yesterday morning at 4 o'clock, I commanded a firearms and drugs operation in the Newport area, which covered both Shaftesbury and Maindy, where we did 4 simultaneous warrants. Pleased to say that we arrested 6 individuals from those warrants, and literally minutes before I came into the chamber, 3 of those individuals have been charged and remanded for Class A drug supply, which is really, really pleasing. So suffice to say, there's lots and lots of activity going on within the Newport area, certainly over the last month. What's really topical is the issue around XL bullies, and I can comment on both sides of the water. There's been some positivity around that. There's been some warrants that's been executed, and a number of XL bully dogs have been seized as a consequence of those warrants as well. The matter of sewer on bikes will never go away, certainly not for the foreseeable future. And I know from the updates I've had from both Inspector Giles and Welty from either side of the water that those operations continue to exist and those sewer on bikes are still being seized. And then just finally, I talked about Operation Forester and the cannabis cultivations in the city centre and how that was widening into other parts of the force. Just by way of update, in the last month in the west of the force, 12 warrants have been undertaken in the areas of Blaenau Gwent, Torfaen and Caerphilly, where 5 Albanian males have been arrested and charged, remanded for court, and a total of 4,500 cannabis plants have been seized. So, reassuringly, we've had no further warrants undertaken in Newport. The collaboration still exists between ourselves, Newport City Council, around that information, that intelligence sharing, and the visiting of the shops within the city centre. But it's very much a work in progress, which I'll update to yourselves on a regular basis too. And that is it by way of update. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Can I invite the leader to say a few words before we open up to any questions from members?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Welcome, Superintendent. It's good to see you today. Firstly, can I begin by offering my thanks to Gwent Police on behalf of the Council for the collaboration that you've shown when a number of groups across the city have very recently wanted to demonstrate their rights to protest publicly. We've had a number of public protests, and I was present at the Steel March that took place in the city a few weeks ago, and I'd just like to pass on the thanks of us all to the city centre team for the way that they work with people rather than against people. So thank you for that. Very positive policing in the city centre during those times. I'd like to ask you, Superintendent, something that perplexes our residents, and so I hope you don't mind me asking you this, but one of the challenges that we all face in the public sector is that very often our work is misreported or misrepresented, and this can actually cause alarm amongst the public. And we've seen it very recently in the response to some articles about knife crime in Gwent. Now, you've just reported to us some very positive feedback about the ongoing work that Gwent Police are doing. How can we support our residents to access the facts about the work of Gwent Police, as opposed to some of the misrepresentation of the fine work that you're doing across our region? So where can our citizens access the facts? Just a couple of other issues just to bring up. The issue of Almond Drive and the safety issues there is still unresolved, so maybe we can pick that up outside of the meeting. And finally, Superintendent, my personal thanks to you and the other officers of Gwent Police for the support that you've shown me recently with regards to my own personal security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, just in relation to the key point around how do we get that information shared and the facts, I suppose, disseminated then to members of the public, it's very much around our engagement. You talk about knife crime and weapon offences generally. The Newport West area of the city does experience the majority of those types of incidents within the Newport area, so much so that Inspector Hannah Welty has now got the portfolio for that. We're benchmarking other forces. We've set up some problem-solving teams just to understand the level of issues that we're experiencing. Following that, then we'll have some targeted patrols. But going back to your original point, it's about engaging with our communities. So it's about those street surgeries. It's about getting our comms absolutely bang on. It's about visibility in our communities, and then obviously having those conversations with members of the public as well. So it's about being transparent and very much wanting to work with yourselves as councillors, as stakeholders, to get those messages certainly out to those communities. We do a lot of good work. Are we good at necessarily telling people all the good stuff that we do? I come here on a Tuesday and a Thursday and I tell you all about all the good stuff that we do. Do we do that consistently on that level of layers within our community? Probably not. So I think it's something that I, as the Superintendent of Newport, really want to push further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just thank you for the work that's been done in Shaftesbury? I'm using that as a, because it's been a long process there, but at long last we've done something about it. I've got Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, Presiding Member. My question is about e-scooters, and I've been reading online about children going to school on e-scooters, and there was an accident or a near accident that was reported online. So my question is about what is the current situation with police liaison in schools, and are you aware and doing anything about children and e-scooters in the school context?
So just 2 points on that then. The first point is around school liaison. As you know, it's been well publicised around the Welsh Government. So we have committed to bridging that gap of funding the police officers until the end of the academic year. That's not going to change. What we then need to start looking at is how do we maintain that gap, particularly around, we talk about knife crime, scooters, etc. So it's something that Chief Superintendent Carl Williams is leading on for the force at the moment. We're currently in consultation with our school liaison officers and the coordinator as part of an all-Wales approach, so we've got that consistency across all 4 policing areas. But just going back to your point, it's really important, particularly around the preventative work, the educational work, about making sure that young persons don't become involved in criminality at such a young age. It's about that early identification and working with children, which is so important. I can certainly let the Chamber know of our progress over the forthcoming months. But e-scooters, zero bikes, as I said at the very start, it's not something that's going to go away overnight. For me, it's something that needs to be looked at a very, very senior level, I mean Parliament, around the legislation, around the sale and the management of those bikes. Because all that we're doing as police and partners is reacting, and we can do as much enforcement as we can, but the prevention bit for me is the educational bit, which in part is schools, but it's around that prevention, around management of those sales of those types of bikes and scooters as well. Thanks.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Petroni.
Thanks, Presiding Member. I hear your words about Zero on Bikes, and I commend the force for doing all the work they do. We recently held a local surgery in Mays Glass and Gare and heard firsthand from many residents about the fear many residents have just walking on the streets, on the pavements, and being hit over and seriously injured. I wonder if we could do more for public engagement front across the city, but also in Gare and Mays Glass, to up the great work and highlight the great work you're doing, but also bring more reports to you by residents of intelligence of who, where, when, because when we push them, not all the time do they report the issues to you, which you need to form an intelligence picture of what's happening. And I wonder if you could do that, and when we ask you to hopefully attend some surgeries, if you could make someone available, that'd be very grateful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I take on board what you're saying. I know the team are quite active in Maes Glass at the moment. As recently as a month ago, they did some proactive covert patrols in the area, and worryingly stop-searched a 14-year-old youth in possession of a machete this long, in addition to drugs as well. And that person was relatively unknown to the police, which is even more alarming. So they are doing more and more patrols, but again, it goes back to what the leader says, but it's that engagement, it's that visibility, and that confidence, I suppose, that we are in the area. People can approach us, can give us those snippets of intelligence that we really thrive on in order to respond effectively to what people are asking us to do.
Thank you. I got Councillor Forsey now.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. Superintendent, I just wanted to ask you about events that took place at Bellevue Park on the 22nd of January, and you may remember the park was cordoned off for some time. And whilst I'm here, I'd just like to pay thanks to our park ranger, Rob Brown, who, when he was locking up the park, he came across somebody who was seriously unwell, and he wasn't able to get help for him immediately, but he stayed with him, I understand, for about 2 hours until some help was available. And when the paramedics arrived, he said that had he been left on his own in the freezing conditions, he probably wouldn't have survived. So I wanted to say thank you to him at the same time. But if there's any update on that situation, please.
That's right. So the circumstances were, I say, suspicious on the outset. It was soon established by the end of that day that it was actually a medical episode. There was some inference initially that there may well have been some connection to an assault, but that was established not to be the case. But in actual fact, the gent in question was subject to a medical episode and condition and not anything criminal.
Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Superintendent, I've had a number of concerns from residents in Alterinne about the number of males who were wandering around the ward at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, trying car doors, testing front doors. It's concerning to residents. I'm just wondering whether there's any opportunity for some additional patrols around the ward and whether these people could be challenged of why they're actually out and about at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning in a residential area where there is nothing for them to be doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And just by way of reassurance, our briefing and tasking will pick up on crime spikes. And whilst I say that over the last month vehicle crime has gone down by 30%, what I would say in the run-up to that there was a real sharp increase in vehicle crime, particularly theft of vehicles. And it's not something that's really unique to Newport. I live in Cwmbran, and we've seen a significant increase in vehicles that's been stolen. So I take on board completely what you're saying. And again, we'll look at Alterinne, as indeed other parts of the force as well, around that particular crime type and issue. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Whitehead, you indicated you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Evening, Superintendent. You may well be aware, I don't know, that there has been an escalation of real bad behaviour at Ogmore Crescent and Bettis, culminating last week in the torching of a car there. Residents, that is famously on the estate one of the quiet areas, so to speak. So for residents to take to social media in their little group called The Square, which was always just talking about tales of the times past, and now that's been taken over by this talk of antisocial behaviour there. I don't know whether you can reassure residents that that is on your radar at all, that area.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not personally aware of the incident that you're referring to, but it's something that I'll ask Inspector Hannah Welty to do that. I think just by reassurance as well, we've looked to reinvigorate our community partnership tasking meetings, which we used to have up and running before COVID in the fire station. That used to take place on a weekly basis, where partners, police, council, fire, Newport City Homes, would all come to that meeting on a weekly basis to discuss their particular demand drivers, so whether that be repeat incident locations, offenders, victims, and then there would be a very much a collaborative partnership approach then to addressing those issues. So it is worrying to hear around the issues that have been experienced in your particular area. But again, things like that, if there are spikes beginning to take place around antisocial behaviour and crimes, then this is something that will be very much picked up in those partnership meetings. But in the interim, I'll get Inspector Welty to have a look at that particular issue.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Mr Presiding Member. Superintendent, two issues, if I may. One is the Pomfane Shops area, which I've raised with you previously. And there was some engagement with local authority officers last year around the summertime. What tends to happen, as you know, is throughout the winter months, things have died down, haven't had a major issue and not needed much of a presence. But we suspect as the nights sort of get a bit lighter and the weather gets a bit better, that things will happen again. And what we do each year is lose momentum. So we start again in about sort of April, May, deal with the stuff and it goes quiet. How can we get ahead of the curve this time in terms of being proactive to try and deal with that? And the second point, if I may, just picking up on the leader's point, really, I'm sorry to hear that she's had some incidents. Those types of incidents have been quite prevalent in the press this week, particularly, you know, with the announcement of funding and protection of MPs as sort of public servants here as well. What can we do and how can we approach you to get support when we need it if people feel vulnerable dealing with residents out in the community?
So just in terms of your first point, and again, going back to collaboration, the Council have recently employed Paul Davis, who was an ex-Chief Inspector. Some of you may well have worked with Paul, but he used to be very much in the serious organised crime. He's now working within community safety. I've had a few meetings with Paul. We're really, really keen to improve our collaborative working together, so much so that we're now not encouraging, shall I say, but ensuring that wardens are now going to the respective areas within Newport, briefing with our community support officers and neighbour teams, and then starting to then go out on joint patrols. So one case in point will be Pomfane Shops. So just by way of reassurance and getting ahead of the curve, it's just making sure we've got that much more joined-up approach, and thereby having more visibility, sharing information, intelligence, and looking at things through several eyes as opposed to one lens. That's the first issue. The second issue, I know that there was an input that I think was it Ian that it did a couple of months ago to councillors and the members just around security concerns. Again, you know, from my point of view, you know, that needs to be extended to community councillors as well, because I know that they've been having the same sort of issues. But again, just by reassurance, you know, what I would say is to reach out and then contact your local inspector, your local policing sergeant, if there's anything that you've got concerns about or some reassurance, and it'll be tailor-made to you and the issues that you've raised as well. you do a really important role. You need to be visible within your communities. You need to speak to the residents, and you need to do that by way of some reassurance as well. So please, if you are having issues, don't stay in silence. Please tell us what's going on, and we can then afford you the sort of the advice and guidance that you quite rightly need. All right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Thank you, Chief and Superintendent. So a couple of things. Obviously, May's Last just had the second anniversary of Mason Williams, the death of Mason Williams. We're still experiencing a kind of support of the bike life, if you will, amongst the community. So there's a lot of bikes going around, especially motorbikes and things, going up and down, causing mayhem around cars and other, doing wheelies, everything like that, really, big intimidation. So it's just to see what can be done alongside what my colleagues already mentioned. The other one, similar again, is motor vehicles. I've mentioned it previously in another council, is the Mays Last Retail Park, and a lot of the evenings they do car rallies. So it's just to address that point again, and they go up and down the SDR road late in the evening. So it's just to again, if that could be addressed, to check in on, from time to time, just to try and persuade them not to do that. And just another one again to do with Mays Last, but there seems to be, rather than outside the main shops itself, a group of young people tend to now move towards Lidl's, cause intimidation, throwing items at people and things like that there. I myself came under attack a couple of weeks ago with people throwing stones at me, etc. Just having a look and trying to get past them. So it is the intimidation again, so it's just moved on a little bit from the shops, but the wider area, as we know, will be hopefully covered with the PSBO as it comes through later. But is there anything that can be done to action as we move forward, so the community at large can obviously just benefit from going to the shops as and when they need to? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So in relation to the 2 points about the motorbikes and the car cruisers, that's something that we task out on a bi-weekly basis to our traffic department. And I know they've been quite effective in other parts of the force, and particularly in Newport. When we talk about previously the road to nowhere down towards Castleton, that was really effective. And then secondly, then in the car parks in and around Sainsbury's and the Shaftesbury area, so that was really well received. So absolutely, yeah, that's something that I'll pick up and feed back through to the team. Lidl's, so in relation to that, we have now got access through our digital services division, which is a regional collaboration between us and South Wales. We can have access to mobile cameras. So if the analytics support an increase in ASB incidents, certain crime types, then we can actually then put in place mobile cameras to support and to provide some reassurance to yourself. And I'm really sorry to hear that you were obviously attacked with stones as well. But yeah, and again, Inspector Welty's going to be really busy for the next month, but certainly Mice Glass is something I'm really passionate about. I was a sergeant in Pill and Mice Glass for many years back in the day. Sadly, it's peaks and troughs, and it seems like yet again there seems to be an increase in ASB incidents down there. So yes, I'll sit down with Hannah and make sure that those issues are being addressed.
Okay, I think I got the last speaker here is Councillor James.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you, Superintendent. I just wanted to pass on my thanks, really, from residents in Shaftesbury, not only for dealing with the problem on Wheeler Street, or at least getting that on the way, but also there's a residents' meeting with the police right now, actually. I would have loved to have been there, but unfortunately it was arranged to clash with the budget meeting. I have given the neighbourhood policing team access to a calendar, so it wouldn't happen again, though. I'm just really pleased to see those meetings restarting. I know residents felt really positively about the last one, which was in, I think, September. But also to echo comments from some of the other councillors in the room about aggression in the community. It's not common knowledge, but it hasn't been a secret either that I was assaulted in the ward in October and have actually really struggled to be on the doorstep since. I actually would appreciate perhaps talking with you outside that about continuing that. It's not good. We should be able to feel safe doing our jobs in our communities, and I just wanted to echo that, and I'm really sorry that other councillors have experienced that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor James. And I'm really sorry to hear that you've been subject to being assaulted as well back towards the tail end of last year. But absolutely, I'm more than happy to sit down with yourself or indeed any other elected members to have those conversations and certainly some by way of reassurance to put things in place through the local teams to make sure that you do feel confident when you are then going out in your communities and then speaking to many of those residents that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Right, I think that's the last of the questions for the Superintendent. So can I thank you once again for your update on and answering the questions as well. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on now to item 4. The next item is the 2024/2025 Council Tax and Budget Report. Before we begin this item, may I remind members that the Council's procedure rules require that proposed amendments to the budget to be submitted 5 days prior to the meeting. Therefore, it is not possible to propose amendments to the budget this evening. I would also remind members that the Council has a statutory duty to approve a balanced budget for the ensuing financial year. As well as the Cabinet's budget proposal, one further alternative budget has been received in accordance with the Council's procedure rules, including statutory officers' advice, and has been circulated as part of a motion to amend the Cabinet's budget proposal. The leader to present the substantive report, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Colleagues, this report is the Council Tax Report for 24-25. You'll be aware that Cabinet met on the 14th of February and finalised our budget recommendations to Council. The Cabinet continued again this year to develop the Council's budget in a very challenging environment. Whilst inflation decreased over the year, the legacy of the COVID pandemic, societal issues and the cost of living crisis were significant issues affecting council services. Within that context, several key issues had to be addressed in the budget, including the demand on council services continued to increase, and significantly so in housing services and children's social care. There has been and continues to be huge pressure on our most vulnerable families, individuals and communities. At the same time, the council spending levels are historically lower than comparable councils in all service areas. The increased capacity required to deal with increasing demand for services and support must be acknowledged. The council has a vast amount of infrastructure and assets it is responsible for and are integral to the delivery of our services. We need to provide additional funding so that these can be maintained. We've relatively high price and inflation increases to take account of. We are proud that Newport is a living wage employer, and our budget continues to ensure the external organisations that we work with pay this themselves also. The budget in front of us today was consulted on extensively, and we received nearly 1,400 public responses to our draft budget. The summary responses of those and the minutes of the meetings with Scrutiny, Schools Forum and our trade unions are included in the papers. On those budget savings, we specifically consulted on. The consultation confirmed that virtually all of them met with the majority or relatively high levels of support and agreement with the public. The funding increases and our decisions on budget investments recommended here will ensure we increase school funding, both by investing more funds over and above cost inflation increases and by not making savings from school budgets. We are investing nearly £10 million into our school budgets for increased costs and increased pupil numbers. We continue to support our most vulnerable families and individuals in our communities. We are investing nearly £12 million in our homelessness services, social care and additional learning needs budgets for cost increases and higher demand. Demand in these areas is increasing significantly. We recognise the need for investment in our highway infrastructure and assets, which are needed for service delivery. Much more is needed, of course, but I'm pleased to say that we have been able to make useful inroads here for this year coming. Investments in these areas, direct and the capital financing budgets, will contribute towards this. The savings that we're proposing are relatively small by historical standards. We've 4.5 million of new savings, of which nearly 4 million were efficiency savings, with no service impacts. In terms of the balance, consultation confirmed, as I've said, that residents understood and agreed with the vast majority of those. This is a positive outcome because after facing a decade of poor funding and austerity from the national government, all councils across the UK are finding it difficult to deliver more services with the funding available to them. Savings are becoming harder and harder to find. Savings are becoming harder and harder to find, which do not have significant impact on the services we provide and for which demand increases. In England, in particular, councils are struggling. The Welsh Government understands and respects local government here in Wales and what it does for residents and communities, and they have continued to provide funding as best they can within their own funding constraints. As the medium-term financial plan shows, this will prove to be even more difficult with the current UK government spending plans, the result of bad management of the economy and disastrous UK budgets. The overall budget, therefore, strikes a balance between increased funding with ongoing new savings and will ensure that residents continue to pay one of the lowest rates of council tax across Wales and indeed the UK. It represents a relatively small increase of £1.75 to £2.26 per week for those households in Newport's most common bandings. And the council tax reduction scheme is there to continue to support those households who are eligible for support with this. We all know that council tax levels here in Newport are relatively low. As an administration, we've always ensured our budgets strike a balance between making ongoing savings and council tax income. It has never been only about council tax increases, as I'm sure some here will continue to say. Today, Newport has the third, almost the second, lowest rate of council tax in Wales and has maintained that position for many, many years. We've not increased council tax higher in relative terms to other councils and have recommended and implemented nearly £80 million of savings over the last decade. Council tax increases proposed for next year across Wales are all higher than previous year's increases, and the increase recommended here tonight is roughly around the average across Wales. And most councils in England with social care responsibilities are also increasing council tax at their maximum permissible levels. Demand in our society and communities for much needed services which help our most vulnerable individuals and families has increased significantly over the last decade and in particular over the last 3 or 4 years. And yet funding levels have never kept pace or recognised that. We've met the challenge of that increase in demand head on and found significant savings over that time. We do need to recognise that in the context of continuing higher demand for services here in Newport and savings found over the last decade, the increase in council tax at 8.5% is much needed. And it will still be seen as one of the lowest across Wales. So to conclude, presiding member, this has been a difficult process this year. I'd like to place on record my thanks to Cabinet colleagues and the officers who've worked tirelessly to ensure that we're able to propose the balanced budget and council tax recommendation presented here today. We believe that this is a fair budget, a sustainable budget and a responsible budget where we have, within the most challenging context, prioritised the most vulnerable. I commend the budget and the council tax required and ask that the council support and approve this. Thank you, presiding member, and I reserve my right to speak at the end.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder, please?
Can I please second the motion, and can I please also reserve my right to speak at the end? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There will now be a motion to amend the budget report. Obviously, I will leave the chair at this particular time, and Councillor Screen will take over during this. And I do declare an interest.
Point of order, Mr. Presiding Member. Yeah. The Deputy Presiding Officer is Councillor Watkins, not Councillor Screen. And if you look at the minutes from the last AGM, you will see that that wasn't changed. So I would like to ask the legal officer what is now the procedure for replacing the presiding officer in the chair if Councillor Watkins isn't going to do it.
Point of order. Sorry, just to clarify, as Councillor Watkins is the mayor, he can't.
Yes, but if Councillor Watkins was in the cabinet, he'd be a cabinet member in the mayor. That is why you changed the system. Councillor Watkins can take the chair, sir.
All right. Can I? At the last AGM, as far as I'm aware, that Councillor Watkins, during his mayoral year, Councillor Screen was nominated to be the deputy presiding officer. Well.
Yeah, you asked for a legal officer's comment. I asked who the deputy presiding member was. I was told it was Councillor Screen. If you're saying it's not, I'm going to need to adjourn the meeting to go and get to the bottom of that.
Well, could I just suggest to you that, as in previous times, that the most senior member takes the chair, whether that's Councillor Mayer or Councillor Morris, I don't know who's more senior, but that's what should be happening.
The rules say that the deputy presiding member takes the chair when the presiding member can't.
Yeah, but why are we playing around with this to be permanent? Because wait a minute, let me finish. All I'm saying is we got a. As far as I was aware, the deputy presiding officer was agreed last year. You're saying that's wrong. Obviously, the legal officer will have to check that. But what we're talking about, I leave the chair because I declare an interest, and we're asking a senior member now, was there, Councillor Screen, to take the chair while this debate, and I won't be taking part in that debate.
First of all, Councillor Screen isn't a senior member. He hasn't been on this council since about 1984, I believe.
You're playing with words now, aren't you?
It's absolutely true, isn't it? Now, we have a procedure and we have a way of doing things, and we have to stick to that. You are somebody that does that to the letter. So Councillor Screen is not the deputy presiding member. Councillor Watkins is not the deputy presiding member because, as you said, he withdrew from that position. So I'm now asking the legal officer what the plan is and who takes the chair for this item.
Quickly, Councillor Mayer, I want to make a point.
Can I move that we elect Councillor Screen to the chair for this, please, and ask for a move straight to the vote, please?
It's not agendaed.
No, wait a minute. Can I just say we have an adjournment for 10 minutes while the legal officer checks that. That's what he said he wanted to do. An indication of what's been discussed and what is the right and proper process that we can move forward on this.
Thank you, presiding member. I'll keep this brief. So we've got a situation where the presiding member is unable to chair the debate, and the deputy presiding member is not in a position to do it. In those circumstances, it's for the council to elect a person to chair that part of the meeting. And therefore, presiding member, if you'd like to invite a proposer and a seconder.
Can I invite Councillor Evans?
Can I move Councillor Alan Screen?
I'll second that.
Can I have a vote then? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Yeah. Obviously, there's a. Thank you. It's unanimous in here, but obviously clearly there's a problem with they can't hear what's going on in here, so it's a bit difficult. But obviously, I think we can assume then it was carried anyway. So thank you. We've had a nice break, and so let's carry on with it. So all agree then, Alan Screen. Sorry.
I'm not sure if we're live on the screen because it normally comes up we're live on the top.
Well, I
know we had a problem at a scrutiny meeting recently where it wasn't live. So yeah, just wonder whether what we had at the scrutiny when I chaired a couple of weeks ago was it wasn't actually live to the members of the public. So yeah.
There's been, obviously, Councillor House as well, there's been problem with their mics, they can't hear as well. It's coming up on there that they can't hear what's going on as well, so. Sorry? Right, you are live now anyway. Okay, thanks a lot. So can I ask Councillor Screen to come up and take the chair, please? Sorry? Yeah.
Okay, can I call on Councillor Howells to introduce his amendment?
Thank you.
Howells. Just to remind you, you've got 7 minutes.
Point of order. I believe Standing Order 6.7c regarding the amendment. No speech by the mover of the amendment may take longer than 3 minutes.
So I'm looking at the standing orders because it says 7 minutes somewhere else, and obviously the leader had 7 minutes.
Sorry, if you look at 6.7, amendments to motion, flip the page, C, I could be wrong here, but it's got no speech by the mover or amendment may be longer than 3 minutes without the agreement of the presiding member. It was only because it was mentioned at 7 minutes. That's
yeah. If you go to 6.6a, speeches, the mover of a motion may speak to it for not more than 7 minutes, and may also speak in reply to it at the end of the debate without restriction.
So which holds? Do you know what?
Well, on the basis that the leader had 7 minutes, so my advice would be that that's how long Councillor Howells gets.
Okay, Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Councillor Screen. Is it okay to call you presiding member? Thank you.
Can I second the motion?
I've got to move it first, haven't I? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, big pardon, yes. Is there a second, please?
Okay.
Does Councillor Howells want to speak?
Yes, sorry, Councillor Howells.
Yeah, I'm going to move the motion now, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Presiding Member. I would like to present the Liswery Independent's alternative budget proposal to Council for debate and agreement. The budget proposal detail can be found in Appendix 04A of the papers for today's meeting. The principle of the budget proposal...
Point of order, Mr Deputy Presiding Member. I believe that a member of the Liswery Independents needs to declare an interest on the alternative budget. With relation to the Thompson Avenue watercourse, I believe a declaration of interest needs to be made.
Which member is that referring to?
I believe Councillor Sterry lives in that actual street and should declare an interest that he wants that maintained.
I might live there, but I nowhere near the Reen.
Just declare an interest.
I'll declare it then.
Is it okay to continue, Mr. Presiding Member?
Just a minute.
Presiding Member, do I have to declare an interest as I live in close proximity to Monk's Ditch?
I didn't realise Monk's Ditch was in the alternative budget, Councillor Oatley.
Well, you never know.
Councillor Howells, you want to introduce your amendment? You've got 7 minutes. And can we get on with it, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. I'm trying. I'll start again. I'd like to present the Liswery Independence Alternative Budget Proposal to Council for debate and agreement. The budget proposal detail can be found in Appendix 04A of the papers for today's meeting. The principle of the budget proposal is that we aim to bring the council tax increase closer to actual inflation. This is because our residents are telling us that we are really struggling with rising costs and the cost of living itself. The alternative budget proposes to increase council tax by 4.63% instead of the 8.5% proposed by the Cabinet. The amendments to the budget aren't significant, and I hope colleagues have had a chance to consider them in detail prior to today's meeting. Mr. Presiding Member, the motion is as follows: to remove the role of the Presiding Member and revert to the Mayor chairing the council meetings with a saving of £9,000. Reduce the publication of Newport matters from 2 monthly to 4 monthly. This will not only save costs of £21,000, it will help to reduce our carbon footprint by reducing the amount of paper that we use. It might be possible to prepare some digital content to replace the reduced postal service. We also propose to remove the leader's car and reduce the driver budget accordingly. In our submission, the leader should be able to travel to engagements by themselves and doesn't require a car and chauffeur. We accept that the Mayor should retain their car and driver, as asking them to travel themselves and robe and derobe by themselves would be more challenging. The saving on this part of our proposal is £17,500. We're also proposing to remove the proposed Newport Live contract manager with a saving of £65,000. At scrutiny that I chair, no evidence was forthcoming that the contract is not working well or that the post is needed for betterment, and therefore it is considered too much of a luxury whilst we are cutting other posts from budgets elsewhere. We also propose to delay the closure of the Civic Centre for 2 days per week. This will require additional investment as opposed to a cut in the budget of £91,000. There is an ongoing asset management review which is looking at all the council's assets and what best ways we can streamline them. It is our submission that the savings proposed here is being considered prematurely and without undertaking a thorough review and audit of all our assets and the best use of them moving forward. At scrutiny, we were told that officers had no data on how many people work at the Civic Centre for 5 days each week and therefore cannot work at home. Until we properly understand the impact of this decision, more work should be done in line with the ongoing asset management review. We are also proposing to reinstate the maintenance of the watercourse at Thompson Avenue, spending £30,000. The decision to remove this work as part of the budget savings last year will have a devastating impact on flood risk to hundreds of residents, and our submission is that it should be reversed. Mr. Presiding Member, the bulk of the savings in our alternative budget is because we have been bold in using some reserves to help with the challenges currently being faced in children's services for the next 2 years. We understand that reserves are for a rainy day and shouldn't be used long term to prop up continued revenue costs. However, as part of this proposal, we propose to task officers to produce a sustainable strategy that moves away from using out-of-area placements in children's social care within the next 2 years. We think this is realistic, and we want better for looked-after children. It is also in line with the Welsh Government's aspirations to remove profit from the care of looked-after children by 2027. As I stated, whilst the use of reserves isn't always ideal, we have to bear in mind that there is currently a forecasted underspend in 23-24 of circa £2.3 million, which is likely to replenish the reserves in the first year in any event. So the use of reserves is small and time limited, and it is the right time and circumstances to do it. Finally, Mr Presiding Member, I can confirm that we are proposing to keep the majority of the investments proposed by the Cabinet, with the exception of some capital maintenance in our highways asset. Up until the final Welsh Government settlement, there was a proposal for 500,000 in this area, and we are proposing to increase that by 200,000. And the Highway Asset Management Plan is coming to scrutiny in April this year, where we propose proper scrutiny of that can be undertaken with a proper plan for looking after our highways. Thank you, Mr Presiding Member.
Right, thank you, Councillor Howells. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Morris?
Yes, can I second and reserve the right to speak later?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Morris. Are there any comments on the proposed amendments?
I didn't reserve my right to speak at the end, but if I can, that's fine.
Councillor Mogford? Just remind you, there's a time limit of 3 minutes.
I won't take any time at all, Mr Presiding Member. It's interesting to listen to an alternative budget and realise that there are alternatives to what's being proposed. I just want to take a little issue with what the leader said, of this being a sustainable budget. Now, we've had an 8.5% budget rise last year, 8.5% projected for this year. I don't see how having...
point of order, sorry. Are we debating the amendment or the substantive motion?
I'm telling you why I'm supporting the amendment. I'm telling you why I will be supporting the amendment. Is that...
Can I remind you, it's a discussion on the amendment.
And I'm telling you why I'm supporting the amendment. I don't think that budget rises of 8.5% year on year are sustainable. We have to be creative and we have to find ways of reducing the impact to the residents. And also, it's just occurred to me that as the presiding member has had to stand down because of an interest, and I've just heard in this budget asking to remove the leader's car, does that mean the leader has to declare an interest? Thank you.
I can clarify that briefly, Deputy Presiding Member, if it would assist. The difference between the two is that the leader's car, as you describe it, it's an item of council property used by the leader in fulfilling her civic functions. The presiding member's interest is that he's remunerated for carrying out the role of presiding member. So there's clearly a difference between the two.
Anyone else? Yeah. Right.
Councillor Whitehead on the screen.
Sorry?
Councillor Whitehead on the screen.
Sorry. Councillor?
Whitehead.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. Firstly, I'd like to throw our weight behind Councillor Howells' alternative budget, and I'd like to say to him, fair play to you for the hard work. You've sat down and done the spade work on this, and you've ironically, more or less on some occasions, you seem to not quite mirror, but there's similarities between yours and the budget being proposed. So it can't be that bad. For me, going back to the primary hot potato, which is it'll always be the council tax increases, and what jumps out of yours is obviously the 4.64. While walking around the residents and asking the residents' opinions and encouraging them to write into the consultation, which obviously a lot did, as we've said, a lot, 70% I think were against it. It is the hot potato. The biggest complaint at the moment are things like the potholes, and I know that's rife across Newport, albeit I also appreciate the struggles financial imposed on councils. But yeah, lest we forget, whichever way we have to do things for our residents all the time, and their views have to be taken on board. And I think there just seems to be a bit of a trend happening, not just across local authorities, but I think nationally, where people are kind of getting a little bit fed up, where their views are not being quite represented and often shouted down. That's just an aside. But yeah, I'd like to throw a weight fully behind the alternative budget and say congratulate the Liswerry Ward councillors on some, at least, some great work.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Is anybody else who speak? Councillor Marshall.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to speak in opposition to the proposed alternative budget put forward by the Liswerry Independent Group. Whilst I appreciate their attempts to address certain budget pressures and reduce the council tax increase, I must highlight the gravely significant risks and uncertainties associated with the proposal that simply cannot be ignored. Let us start with the proposal that crosses my portfolio as written in the documents that we have, suggesting the utilisation of earmarked reserves to fund the children's services out-of-area placements pressure for a 2-year period. While this may appear to be a quick fix, I must emphasise the grave risk that it poses to our council's capital programme. By depleting the capital expenditure reserve by a staggering £4.5 million, we cripple our ability to address emerging capital expenditure pressures that may arise in the medium term. And let us not forget the complexity of this area and the realities that we face in providing safe and as close to our local authority placements as possible. However, due to said complexities, we simply cannot provide limited and very specialised care to every individual, no matter how much we would wish to do so. At the end of the 2-year period, what then? What do we do for our disabled and vulnerable children at that point? Furthermore, assuming that the out-of-area placements pressure can be eradicated within 2 years, it's not only optimistic but dangerously risky. While our local authority has made significant strides in Wales and has a commendable in-house capacity of beds, let us not fool ourselves into thinking that it is an easy fix. This is a national UK issue and really causing significant challenges in how local governments are trying to tackle it. Only recently, councils of all colours have had to plead to the UK London Government for support with this area, along with homelessness. This is because of the differing types of care required and what we as an authority can provide. Some young people require a significant number of workers per individual away from other young people, and this level of care comes at a high cost. We are well aware of this, and we're actively reviewing future plans to address this issue. Additionally, emergency placement needs can arise at any time, even on Friday nights when there's no other options available. We have a statutory responsibility to provide services, and we must not forget that as corporate parents that we all are. The budget proposed by this administration allows for the necessary room to develop that robust and sustainable approach, given the increasing number of referrals and cases coming through our safeguarding hub, and it's imperative that we address this issue and support departmental resilience by reducing the caseload for each individual social worker. The proposed reduction in the rate of council tax increase to 4.63% severely hampers our ability to improve our position in comparison to other local authorities in Wales and to keep our children safe. A low council rate at this time limits our funding levels, preventing us from adequately supporting essential services in a time when public sector funding is already under strain and the demand for services is high, as noted already, especially in a growing city like ours. A lower council tax rate severely constrains our ability to meet the increasing...
Councillor Marshall, can you finish, please?
Thank you. And in conclusion, we do have to read the implications as outlined on the main budget report, on section 151 officer report, and I thank the presiding member for the time given.
Right, thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I've only had 2 careers in my life, really. One's been economics and one's been social work. I don't fix cars and I don't do electrics, and it's dangerous. And that's exactly why I think the opposition next to me shouldn't dabble in social work and economics, really. It's lethal. So they've said that they've used words like creative, bold and realistic as part of this amendment. The reality is it's naive, utterly unrealistic, and it's dangerous. The budget would leave this city's finances incredibly vulnerable, and in the mid-term, but more importantly, it would expose our most vulnerable young people in care to an uncertain and chaos future. The complexities of public service, and especially social care, are too important to get wrong, too important to dabble with, and produce alternatives that just won't work. The opposition amendment fails our city for personal, individual and short-term gain, at the expense of sacrificing our future generations of this city. It's dangerous, it's damaging, and as you've probably gathered by now, it's one I can't support. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey? Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I note with concern the proposal to develop a strategy using £4.528 million out of our reserves to bring out-of-county placements back to Newport and remove the budget pressure going forward. Whilst I do recognise in education the cost of out-of-county placements and our KPIs associated with this, Education and Social Services have worked hard in recent years to ensure children stay within the city, which does reduce costs and ensures close family contact. To this end, we have created a school specifically for children with ASD, which has recently expanded, reducing pressure on MySebu so that they can focus on the support of children with other profound learning needs. We have a lot to be proud of and are leading in Wales in how we best support our children. This is sector-leading practice, with awards recently being won by Ysgol Denbrew. However, what I also understand is that a good number of our children are in out-of-county placements for very good reasons. For some of our children, this will not change. It's the bespoke and unique support that some of our children require that is especially costly and is not available in Newport. Inasmuch as we would prefer children to be supported in their own county, this is unrealistic and unreasonable. Sometimes it's necessary to place children where those specialist services are available. It's the bespoke and specialised nature of this provision is the issue. Finding the expertise in a school where several children with similar needs are supported is vital. It's about best practice, using cutting-edge resources that will really make the difference. It is costly, but it's the right thing for these children. It's our moral and statutory duty to ensure that they are effectively cared for. There are no plans or costings to substantiate your proposal. How will this work? How will children be best supported? Where will they be placed? This is just a speculative, high-risk proposal designed to deliberately pull at the heartstrings of our residents, a selfish manipulation of the truth, a focus on media hype and nonsense. I cannot support this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I can't really talk because I am absolutely livid that they want to borrow £4.58 million to provide a statutory service that we are already using.
Point of order. Please, could you point out where in our budget proposals it says we want to borrow money?
Internal borrowing, £4 million. And if you read what the finance officer said, he doesn't agree with you. Whilst it's called reserves that you want to borrow that have to be paid back.
Point of order, Mr. President. The Section 1.5 officer doesn't say in his report that he doesn't agree with us. If I can correct the record. I've had the conversation with the Section 151 officer, several meetings with him and his deputy, and he is satisfied that the budget meets the necessary procedures and is balanced. Thank you.
Can I carry on?
I believe Councillor Harvey was addressing the budget.
The proposal to utilise earmarked reserves to fund 2.64 million children's services out-of-area placements for 2 years will result in capital expenditure reserve reducing by 4.528 million. Utilising reserves in this way reduces the scope to support emerging capital expenditure pressures, and should they emerge over the medium term, should such pressures be unavoidable, this potentially creates an unfunded pressure on the Council's capital programme. Whilst it's been suggested future revenue underspends could be used to replenish reserves, it's not a guarantee and cannot be relied upon. So, going back to what I was originally saying, please, Mr. Presiding Member. Don't shout at me.
Sorry, can we calm down?
Don't shout at me. I'm trying to
calm
finish
down,
what
please?
I'm saying.
Can we calm down? All right. Councillor Harvey, have you finished?
No.
Right.
It's a statutory service that we provide for the most vulnerable disabled children, and to use them to offset council tax, quite frankly, is sickening. Absolutely sickening. And can you confirm whether you were going to save 91,000 or 94,000, because you've given two figures, and you also said you're going to reduce the capital budget from 700 to 200,000. And I'm glad Mr Whitehead agrees with you, because that means the school he's desperately needing is not going to get built.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. Just want a bit of clarification as well, because Councillor Howells mentions in his alternative budget that they're putting money into infrastructure, when actually there's a line that says they're taking it out, and a line from the Section 151 officer which actually says the proposal to reduce the annual sums allocation by 500,000 will impact upon the Council's ability to address the maintenance backlogs that currently exist in relation to both the highways network and property estate. So what he said was regarding their budget was slightly disingenuous, I would say. So again, agreeing with Councillor Harvey, hedging your bets on the backs of the most vulnerable children, not filling our potholes and putting extensive pressure on our capital investment programme, but making sums available for an individual watercourse in one of their streets, which is to be continuously cleaned and maintained by NCC officers, all for a saving of £53.42 per year per bandy house, is, well, hang on, socialism. It certainly isn't. I do not support this alternative.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lacey. Councillor Davis. Oh, Councillor Cox, sorry.
Should have Councillor Clark as well. Councillor Clark was next.
Sorry, Councillor Cox. Councillor Clark was actually next.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. Nearly every council meeting that I've attended, some of the members of the Liswery Independents say they are socialists at heart. This certainly isn't a socialist budget. They are gambling with the residents of Newport's money. And if the gamble doesn't pay off, who foots the bill? The residents of Newport. Am I being overcautious by saying this? Let me read what the Chief Finance Officer states on page 164 and 165. I quote, "Whilst it has been suggested that future underspends could be used to replenish reserves, this is not, I stress, this is not a guarantee and cannot be relied on." Another quote, "If the assured transformation is not achieved, it could mean the pressure could potentially still exist in 2 years." So this proposal by the Liswery Independents, I believe, is just on a wing and a prayer. And it's willing to gamble with the residents of Newport's money. So then you move on to the section, the new budget savings, removal of the role of the presiding officer. That's usually the Conservatives' line, but there it is. Then we move on to the reduction of the publication of Newport Matters. It's in there. But if you look at the latest comms survey regarding Newport Matters, the response of the Newport people is positive. Also, for people who aren't lovers of the internet, and that's residents of Newport, they're not lovers of the internet, this amendment reduces their intake of news and what's going on in the Newport area. So then we go on to the removal of the leader's car and reduced driver's budget. I'm amazed on this one. I've just watched over about an hour ago the Tory UK minister speaking on security for MPs and elected members, including councillors and mayors. Councillor Howes himself, and actually going back, Councillor James, your incident, that was dreadful, and I'm sorry to hear that. But Councillor Howes asked the superintendent, what are we going to do about security along those lines? But by removing the car, the leader of this council, when attending meetings, every meeting, weekends meetings, will have no security with them, no driver. So basically, against what the UK government has said, we're actually making the call, or the call is not to have any security. Not to have any security to the leader of this council. And all of these proposals, the presiding member, the Newport Matters, the
Councillor Clark, can you start to finish, please?
For 30 seconds. Costs, not 2 minutes. Costs, with all those proposals, or makes a savings for residents 7p a month. I cannot support a budget which is about headlines and is gambling with the residents of Newport's money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Cox.
I can't imagine there's anybody in this chamber who wants to increase the council tax or to levy any extra charge on people in this city if it was not absolutely necessary. That we're all well aware of the cost of living crisis and the really struggle that many people in this city are having just to survive at the moment. But I can well understand why the independents and the opposition have wanted to come in this council chamber and portray themselves as maybe somebody beyond the rest of us who are maybe the champions of the council taxpayer. But to be quite frank, when I read this, I couldn't believe it because, to be quite frank, it was something like looked to me like something out of the Liz Truss sort of handbook on financial wisdom, that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I honestly believe this is quite disingenuous because, with risk of flattering the opposition, I don't believe that everybody over there can actually believe this was a realistic proposition. Because it's not, because if you read the comments of the finance officer and the officers on this, that it literally is putting the whole future financial viability of this council at risk. That we've got a budget. We don't know the final budget yet because there are many things coming along. We don't even know what the cost of them is going to be yet. We don't know what the demand on certain services are going to be. We don't know how much we're going to get out of particular grants. Everybody is putting up red flags about the situation that's likely to exist this time next year and the even deeper crisis that local governments to be in. And at a time like that, to come along and talk about taking £4.5 million out of the reserves for a project which really we've no idea at the moment whether it's going to be successful or not, I think is totally irresponsible. And I just honestly cannot help believe that there's nothing else here but the opposition and the independents putting a few headlines in the Argus, actually, above financial responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Sterry.
Might I start with saying that we've got £144 million in reserves and we're on about taking 4.5. That's the first point. But what is the purpose of a public consultation when little consideration has been given to the feedback provided, ultimately disregarding the results? Sorry.
Point of order, please, Mr Presiding Member. Reserves are not a savings account. They're a disaster fund.
We are in a disaster. And I'll explain why. So I'll start this again then. What is the purpose of a public consultation when little consideration has been given to the feedback provided, ultimately disregarding the results? 70% of residents said the 8.5% council tax increase was too high. We, the Lisworley Independents, have listened to the residents and we have tabled an alternative budget, which, I might add, has been ratified by the council senior financial team, and that does indeed add up. In summary, we have recommended a council tax increase that is more in line with inflation. I recommend that my fellow councillors reflect on the following. Will you be bold enough to vote for what the residents have requested, or will you go against their feedback and just do as what you've been told to do?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stowell-Corden.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm going to keep this short because what else is there to say than vote Indie, get Tory financial mismanagement in Newport? So embarrassing. No planning, no thought, gambling with our most vulnerable children for a few Facebook likes and an Argus headline. It's all jammed tomorrow. What an absolute shower.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bartoni.
I've been called worse, presiding member. I would like to focus my comments on the transformation piece around out-of-area placements that some of my colleagues have hinted upon. Transformation is costly, time-consuming. You have to think it through. Sometimes you make mistakes as you try to find the right course of action to develop what's best for them and for residents and for this council. That is when you're dealing with not a vulnerable group. This is particularly close to me. My sister had profound learning difficulties. She needed specialist care. These children need the care wherever it is. I can assure you of that. They are the most vulnerable. And the reserves to fund that pressure is a gamble. It's a gamble on ensuring that we have a transformation plan within 2 years, and that's my job. But putting a time restraint on getting a delivery of saving, a complete saving on that fund pressure over 2 years for that group. Some of these children, and I say this with all honesty, will always be out of county. They're such extreme cases. And you said that this investment is no longer required. It will always be required by any administration of any colour or no colour. I can't vote for that. We can't vote for that. No socialist can vote for that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor
Can I call for the recorded vote, please?
So, yeah, she needs to do that, yeah. Because Councillor was just reserved his right to speak, and then Councillor Howells gets the last word on the debate, and then we'll move on to the vote.
Councillor Morris, you seconded the motion. Do you wish to take your right to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer.
Monitoring Officer, if I may. The request for a recorded vote doesn't mean move to the vote. It just means that members would like the vote to be formally recorded individually. It doesn't mean that the meeting needs to move to the vote now. So can we return to the list of people who requested to speak in order, please?
I'm happy to stand.
That was directed to me. I did check with the Deputy Presiding Member, and he said that nobody else wanted to speak, so I've suggested we've got other members who want to speak. We need to go back into the debate then.
Okay. I got Councillor Morris then. No? Sorry, Councillor Mudd. Yeah. Would you confirm the amendments are accepted? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you very
Councillor
much.
Forsey.
Nottingham, Birmingham, Croydon, Thurrock, Slough, Woking. These are all councils who have issued Section 114 notices. This is when councils effectively declare themselves bankrupt. The Lisbury budget increases the level of risk and uncertainty and increases the chance of Newport being added to this list of bankrupt councils. The budget that Lisbury Group has proposed is short-term and risky. It will be storing up problems for next year and the year after. The reduction in reserves would not only increase the risk that some capital projects could not be carried out, but would lead to an increase in external borrowing and increased costs for the council. They want to remove £500,000 from the budget to prepare potholes. However, I'm pleased to note that the Lisbury budget does not propose any changes in my portfolio. Last year they didn't want to do their recycling, and that risked us being fined for not increasing our recycling rates. Last week, Waste Savers reported a 28% increase in metals, a 20% increase in plastic, and an 8% increase in food recycling. And the majority of residents are doing more recycling. This year, they don't want to fund children's care or potholes. The only question remaining is, what short-term and risky scheme will they come up with for next year?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Forsey. Councillor Morris? Sorry, Councillor Mudd. Beg pardon.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. I wasn't going to speak to the amendment, but there's a few points that I'd just like to address. So, we've heard contributions from everybody in the Chamber, or from a number of people in the Chamber on this today. And I don't know if anybody saw Newsnight last night, but there were some interesting contributors, the chair of the Local Government Association and also the leader, Conservative leader of Croydon Council. You'll all be familiar with Croydon. They've been bankrupt 3 times. So the discussion, however, was really important, and it was based on data from the Local Government Information Unit, which really talked about the current threat to public service provision, which was described as the bedrock of society. What we do is the bedrock of society, and you will have heard contributions on that tonight. There is a significant threat to this, with 9% of English councils reporting a risk of bankruptcy next year and 50% over the next 5 years. And there is a significant risk of this happening in Wales if we are not prudent in terms of what we're doing. The Prudential Code requires us to ensure that financial decisions are affordable, prudent and sustainable. You all know this because I tell you every time I present a report on finance. You all know this. What you don't seem to have got a grasp of is how we manage and how we calculate and how we record reserves. And I urge you to read the reports in the appendices which explain these once again, with great clarity, actually. So thank you to the finance team for that. I cannot support this amendment. Whilst I welcome members of the opposition coming forward with an amendment, because it's the first time I've seen this since 2012, so well done, chaps, for this. Whilst I welcome this in this formalised way, I cannot support it. It is short-term, it's short-sighted, and it risks the well-being of the most vulnerable people in our city. It also risks our ability to deliver on much-needed capital projects going forward, including a much-needed primary school in the Bettis area.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mudd. Councillor Morris? Just to remind you, you've got 3 minutes.
Other members who wish to speak.
Sorry. Is there any other members who want to speak for or against the amendment?
I would like to make an amendment.
Councillor Morris, yes.
I would like to make an amendment to our amendment that we spend more money on heating in this chamber, but I know I can't do that. I've heard some fantastic things today. It's come as a complete shock to me and my colleagues to be called Tories. For those of you that know me and have known me all my life, you know my politics and you know my colleagues' politics. I notice all the comments that we've had, that 90% of them have come from the Cabinet. I notice most of the backbenchers have sat quietly. Why are we here? Why are we here? I went to a funeral yesterday of a very, very good friend, a person I met knocking the door on my very, very first election. That woman reminded me, before you get elected, remember why you're there. You're not there for you, you're there for the people that put you there. We've made a few suggestions that seem to have caused a bit of anger amongst the Cabinet. When we suggest using money from our reserves, right? We're told it's rainy day money. Where have we all been? There's been a monsoon for almost a decade. Let me quote to you some of your figures. 14-15, you put up the poll tax by 4.5%. 15-16, 5%. 16-17, 3.9. 17-18, 3.5. Happened to be an election year. Let's go on another 5 years. 19-20, 5.95%. 20-21, 6.95%. 21-22, 3.7%. 22-23, another election year, 2.3%. We've now just had two 8.5% increases. Enough is enough. You have a choice in here tonight. Your choice is you either put the rates up by 8.5% or 4.6%. And to accuse us of putting the most vulnerable children in this city in danger, to accuse us of that, in your opinion, what? Yeah, fair comment, I accept. I do apologise for that. I apologise for that. What we have suggested is that we take 2 years to prepare to provide our own facilities so those kids are kept closer to home. We have not put anybody in danger. You have a choice.
Sorry, shouldn't this be through the chair?
Sorry, Councillor Morris, you've got 20 seconds, please.
20 seconds. The choice is you either represent the people and you have to go back and face the people that have put you here. And you justify to them why you have chosen the path you took.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. It's great to hear the debate around this. It's good to see colleagues are giving the budget their full attention and considering the impact our decisions have on the citizens of Newport. This is how it should be. Not just a rubber stamping exercise of a proposal from officers, but a full debate on the impact that our decisions will have on the people we represent. I hear in the comments concerns about utilising earmarked reserves and the risks that presents. I refer colleagues to the comments of the Section 151 officer, which have been partly laid out in other speeches. They say, and I quote, "Utilising reserves in this way reduces the scope to support emerging capital expenditure pressures, should they emerge." And I emphasise the "should they emerge." Moreover, he says that future revenue underspends could be used to replenish reserves is not guaranteed and cannot be relied upon. However, we know from the last council meeting and the question to the leader from Councillor Morris that we have had £41 million of underspends in the last 5 years. In my submission to you today, it's prudent and sensible to use a small amount of reserve such as this. The minimum we're likely to need to use is just under 2.5 million. The maximum is 4.7 million. We have nearly 140 or just around £140 million worth of reserves we have built up by good, robust financial management. The Section 15 officer also deals with risks in the original Cabinet proposal. He says a small amount of risk is appropriate. Nothing comes without risk, and I submit we must be bold. We are not in the position of the borrowing stories we see over the border of councils going bankrupt like Thurrock and Birmingham, and we won't be by using a small amount of reserves to help our residents out while we put a proper plan together to deal with the pressures on children's social care. I put to colleagues that this is a sensible policy to use a small amount of reserves, less than 4% of them, in a time-limited way to ease the financial burden on our residents who are really feeling the pinch right now. I also want to draw your attention to the Section 151 officer's comments, which state, and I quote, "By reducing the proposed council tax increase rate to 4.63%, this means that the council is unlikely to improve its position relative to other councils." This was also mentioned by one of the Cabinet members as well. And this, to me, goes to the heart of the issue here today. There is an element of unhappiness that Newport has one of the lowest council tax rates in Wales and a desire to put up council tax above inflation to catch up with other councils. Firstly, I think we should be proud to have one of the lowest council tax rates in Wales. No doubt it plays a significant role in the reason why people are moving here in their droves, and we are the fastest expanding city in Wales. If we put the council tax up, we risk stifling growth. We have seen the burden that higher rents and mortgages have had recently on the housing market, for example. Secondly, and unfortunately, the reason why we have one of the lowest council tax rates in Wales is because in election years, the administration puts a really low rate increase in to incentivise votes. My colleague, Councillor Morris, has laid that out today. What happens subsequently is that we fall behind and put inflation-busting increases in to catch up the difference. We must be more consistent and aim for as close to inflation as we can each year instead of this yo-yoing effect. I put to colleagues that what has happened on this occasion is that a council tax increase has been set of 8.5% and we have then set a budget to match it rather than the other way round. This is backed up by the fact that a budget was prepared with a proposal that went out for consultation of 8.5%, which Cabinet was satisfied balanced the difference between investment and spending. Then further funding comes in from Welsh Government, which could have been used to reduce that increase and the resulting burden on residents, but instead further investment was made with no decrease in council tax for residents. Now, please don't get me wrong, Mr Presiding Member. I fully support investment in services. That's why my constituents are crying out for, and I support those investments, but not at a cost burden to our residents who are struggling right now. I accept that budgets are hard to balance, and the austerity and reduction in funding from Westminster has made the challenges over the last few years and the next few years more difficult. However, I think respectfully on this occasion, the Cabinet has failed to properly give consideration to what officers have proposed to them and what the impact is on the people that elect us. A few simple tweaks to this budget have resulted in a more realistic rate increase that is more palatable to residents, proper scrutiny of where the costs are, where the waste is, and a full cart and branch review of how we are spending residents' money is needed. Colleagues, let's be bold. This is a Labour Council where I would have expected investment in services and protection of the most vulnerable. Have we forgotten that? Please don't forget the people that voted for you. I reiterate what Councillor Sterry said earlier. Think about voting with them, not where you're told and forced to vote. Thank you, Mr Presiding Member. I would also like to thank everybody for a healthy debate on the subject. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Howells.
Okay, members, there's already been a resolution for a recorded vote, so we'll now move on to that. I will call out the name of every member, save for those who have given apologies, in alphabetical order, and if you could please indicate for, against or abstain. So, Councillor Adan.
Against the alternative budget.
Councillor Al-Nuami. Councillor Al-Nuami. Are you there, Councillor Al-Nuami?
He has been unwell. He may have had to log off, or he might have lost connection.
I'll come back to him at the end. Councillor Baker-Westhead.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Batruni.
Against.
Councillor Bright.
Against.
Councillor Clark. Against. Councillor Cleverly.
Abstain.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Bev Davis.
Against.
Councillor Deb Davis.
Against.
Councillor Druitt.
Against.
Councillor Evans. Councillor Forsey.
Against.
Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Harris.
Against.
Councillor Debbie Harvey. Councillor Tim Harvey.
Against.
Councillor Horton. Councillor Mark Howells. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hussain. Councillor James.
Abstain.
Councillor Jenkins.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Is that Councillor?
Can you hear me?
Councillor James.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I've got you as abstain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Jones. Councillor Callaway. Councillor Lacey. Councillor Linton. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Mayer. Councillor Mogford. Councillor Morris. Councillor Mudd. Councillor Perkins. Councillor Peterson. Councillor Peterson. I'll come back. Councillor Pym. Sorry, Councillor Alex Pym.
Against.
Councillor Matthew Pym. Against. Councillor Reynolds.
Against.
Councillor Routley. Councillor Screen.
Against.
Councillor Spencer. Councillor Sterry. Councillor Stowell-Corton. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Townsend.
For.
Councillor Watkins. Councillor Whitehead.
No whip in our party. For.
So we come back then to Councillor Al-Nuami. Can you hear us?
Against.
Thank you. And Councillor Peterson. Not present. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the results of the ballot are as follows. For 11, against 32, abstentions 2.
Yes, I announced that the motion is defeated.
So therefore the amendment falls. I now ask for Councillor Cochrane to return to the chair, please.
Right, can I thank Councillor Screen? I'm sure you want to lie down in a darkened room with a flannel on your head after this. Right, we'll move on now to the substantive motion. The leader?
The leader's already spoken.
You're ready? Sorry, the leader's already spoken. Straight on to the debate, that's right. Anyone want to talk to the motion? Councillor Druitt?
Presiding Member, this is a prudent budget. Reductions in council services are being forced upon us. Newport City Council budget depends on what we get from the Senedd, which depends on what it gets from Westminster. If our Wales budget had kept pace with the economy since 2010, Wales would have got £3.5 billion more. Instead, our spending power has been eroded by decisions taken by Westminster Government. A decade of austerity and record levels of inflation have led to these council cutbacks. And even though we will receive additional money over the next 2 years, this will not nearly enough compensate for past losses. Presiding Member, let's be mindful that reductions in council services are being forced on us by Westminster. Just to make ends meet, we have to increase council tax by 8.5% so that essential services are maintained. Essential services helping school pupils, especially additional learning needs pupils. Social service provision for the elderly and the young. Safeguarding our citizens. This Newport Labour Council sets a prudent budget, not a reckless one. Unlike many other local authorities, unlike independent Pembrokeshire, where there's a 16% council tax increase proposed, and Ceredigion, where there's an 11% proposal. All the cuts to services we are forced to make is set against a background where last year 14 councils went bust, another 14 councils going bust this year. Presiding Member, I support the proposals for housing and communities. I support the transformational work that's already been achieved and is ongoing. I support the provision for environment and public protection. I support the budget proposals which have been made with due diligence, bearing in mind the financial cutbacks that the Council itself is facing. It would be imprudent to do otherwise. This is a prudent budget.
Thank you, Councillor Druitt. Anybody else wants to speak on? Councillor.
Thank you. I don't usually get up and speak in council meetings, but I feel I have to today. And as Councillor Morris pointed out, I am a backbencher. I'm not scared to get up and speak when I feel it needs to be spoke. And I'm sure all the other backbenchers are the same. But I have to get up and support this motion. I, as a grandfather, have a grandson which is vulnerable. And I would have spoke against the amendment, but I just didn't want to repeat what other people are saying. I support this budget because we look after our residents. I got children which are struggling, paying bills and whatever, but when you explain to them what the 8.5% does, they accept it. And I drink twice a week in a pub, local pub, and once you explain that to people, what the 8.5% is, they accept it. And I think a lot of people need a lot of explaining to it to them. So for that reason, I support the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I shall start with a reminder of a point of information for the many councillors who were not here when you were in opposition. You insisted there should be no council tax increase at all because of the cost of living crisis caused by the then Labour UK government. Remember the note left in the Treasury? Sorry, there's no money left. We accept there should be an increase in council tax, and we consistently put it up in line with inflation. Prior to this, Labour administrations had no consistency and even had no price rises at all in an election year. It is noticeable that you too have minimal increases in election years. For as long as I can remember, the Cabinet and indeed Labour group seem to have selected amnesia when it comes to funding. So let me put the record straight. Your Welsh Labour government have been responsible for funding councils since last century. They can allocate the money they receive from Westminster as they see fit. They are perfectly entitled to squander tens of millions of pounds on the airport, failing airport, dodgy land deals, M4 road relief consultations, 20-mile-an-hour zones, or extra assembly members, or they could prioritise local government. And let's put this into perspective. The population of Wales is just over 3 million. The population of England, around 56 million, roughly 18 times the size. So, for example, when Welsh Labour squandered £150 million on the M4 relief road consultations, then that would be equivalent to the UK government wasting almost £3 billion just on that one item. And how many efficiency savings have the Welsh Government made over the past 5 years? None. So perhaps you should be going back to them for additional funding. The UK Government also recently gave the Welsh Government an additional £25 million for local government, and Newport has benefited from that by around £2 million, something the Cabinet have failed to acknowledge. Of course, they also have tax-raising powers, but have decided not to use them because of the cost of living crisis. And yet here you are, supporting an 8.5% council tax increase. You can dress it up all you like, just a few extra pounds a week, but the reality is much starker. I also notice you're now quoting bands A to C increases, when band D has always been the normal. In 2011-12, an average band D was paying £800.
Councillor Evans, can you start winding up a bit now, please?
Now it's going to be £1,500, while a band A, band I, has gone from £1,870 to almost £3,500. Make no mistake, this is a real kick in the teeth for hard-working residents who will not only be paying significantly more, but receiving less services from recycling collections, dark streets and giant potholes appearing daily. Inflation is currently running at 4%.
Councillor Evans, I have asked you to wind up.
I'll go as quickly as I can. Last bit.
Testing me now.
And coming down, the council tax consultation saw 70% of those in the public survey thought 8.5% was too much. So you go out to listen to the public, then ignore them completely. The sheer hypocrisy is staggering, and we will be voting against this outrageous motion. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, presiding member. Hugely disappointed in the Newport Conservatives' reaction to the budget, or Matthew's just then, Councillor Evans. And, you know, hats off going back to the independents. There was an amendment. I think it was mentioned, I don't think we've had one from the Conservatives, but quite happy to knock ours, but nothing themselves. And there's a blinkered attitude, isn't there? Because yet again we go down that road of the Welsh Government. And Matthew's words, the millions squandered. Absolutely. Let's talk about the 8.7 billion squandered on the PPE, which was never used. You know, that was squandered. So could you imagine if Newport just had a bit of that? If it wasn't squandered, just that little bit. How today could have been a little bit different. But the financial issues, again, it's about Wales. It's not just about Wales, is it? And that's what the Conservatives will try and make it. It's about Newport. Let's really narrow it down to Newport and Wales. Let me quote you. I think all local governments across the country are heading into a death spiral unless the issue of funding is resolved. That's a quote from the leader of the Conservative Party at Kent Council in an open letter to the Prime Minister. Let's add to that the 40 Tory MPs who wrote to the Prime Minister to demand extra funding for councils to avoid cuts in crucial services. Not Labour, 40 Tory MPs. So yes, you're right, tough decisions have to be made. But again, we're not here to chase tomorrow's headline. We're here to support every resident in Newport.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley. You've got 3 minutes, line.
You know, I'm glad that you
you treat me in such a deplorable way by being the only member in this chamber that you remind me that there's 3 minutes. However, I'm not going to hold that against you or be prejudiced towards you. You can't help yourself. But I'm going to tell you a story
It's past
anyway.
history with you, that's why I raised it.
I was passing. Can I raise a point of order, please?
Oh.
Point of clarification.
What's the point of order?
No, the clock is stopped. To the legal officer, I am fed up of the way I'm being treated in this chamber by the presiding member. He's treating me different from anyone else. Can you remind him he must treat everybody with equal respect and not comment after? He's like a snidey child.
Right, thank you.
Right. But I'm still going to tell you a story. Start the clock. I'm going to tell you a story. Chapter 1, and the story's called The Truth. We all like the story, don't we? But sometimes people don't like the truth. According to the Public Audit Committee, mismanagement of public accounts has cost people dearly in Wales. The Welsh Government has mismanaged the finances of Wales. £150 million had to be sent back to England because they couldn't allocate it. £145 to £150 million was wasted on the M4 relief road. £33 million on new signs for roads. Untold millions, because they haven't got the up-to-date figure, on the airport. Now they want to introduce another 100 million plus for new Assembly members. And they're doing this against the background of the cost of living crisis. A cost of living crisis. This isn't the right time to be introducing this. And I actually feel sympathy for this council. Sympathy for the members opposite. Because if this was some dramatic play...
Councillor Routley, your 3 minutes are up.
Well, if this... Well, oh, come on.
I'm not,
Well,
I'm
if
not
this
the
was
time.
some dramatic
Listen, you're
play,
wasting time now.
The Senate would be classed as Fagin, and you guys
I'm
would
telling
be
you-
classed as the Artful Dodger, because you've got to pick a pocket or two,
Right,
and you're doing that now.
sit down, Councillor Routley, your 3 minutes are up, okay? No problem. No problem. No problem. Did you want to speak, Councillor Petroni? 3 minutes, mind, okay?
Thank you. 3 minutes it is. Thank you, Councillor Routley, for your informative speech. To get lectured by the Conservatives about economic mismanagement in this day and age, the Liz Truss budget by Independent Resolution Foundation said cost the economy £30 billion. Added over £200 to everyone's mortgage on average. And then we get lectured about council tax increases. And we get lectured about economic mismanagement when they have presided over the worst living crisis in living memory. And we're getting lectured on this side of the house. I mean, I'll give you brass neck, guys. I'll give you brass neck. That is taking the biscuit. I wanted to mention about capital investment. I think Councillor Howells referred to using some of the capital expenditure reserve. Capital investment in this city, mark my words, will be the determination of whether it's successful in the future or not. If you prioritise all your money just into revenue, you'll be ever fighting a losing battle. Capital will drive this city forward into the 21st century. We have growing expectations, a growing population. This is not the time to cut capital. And this leader, this cabinet, this group have increased capital expenditure by 77%. There is a reason to that. We have schools to build, bridges to fix, roads to mend, not pipe dreams to deliver.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cox?
There are 2 points, please, Presiding Member, I'd like to make. One is we've constantly come back to this issue about this is a Welsh problem, this is a Welsh crisis in local government. That it clearly is an absolute UK-wide crisis. 1 in 10 councils in England have already forecast there's a real danger of them going bankrupt next year. That in Scotland, it's 1 in 4 councils have predicted that there's a clear chance of them going bankrupt next year. I mean, it's a UK crisis. It just does not apply to Wales. And to be quite frank, I think the point's already been made. I won't labour it. I mean, after HS3, Truss and Kwarteng completely trashing the UK budget, dodgy COVID contracts and the rest of it, I suggest the opposition keep quiet about wasting money in public service. But the point I'd like to make is that this crisis is totally unnecessary. It could be solved literally tonight. The Chancellor Exchequer, it's been made quite clear, has got sufficient financial headroom in the forthcoming spring budget to actually solve this crisis by disposing of a fraction of the money that is available. But of course that's not going to happen, because as far as the government are concerned and the Chancellor in London's concerned, it's not children, it's not vulnerable adults, none of those things are the priority. The priority is sinking any money he's got into tax cuts to try and salvage the skin of this absolutely dreadful government we've got. And that's the priority. That's why we've got the problem we've got this year, the crisis we've got this year in local government. And the second point I'd like to make is, somebody pointed the finger over here, I think, and asked why I'd come into local government. Why did I come into local government? I came into local government, yes, to make sure that money was spent efficiently, but I came into local government because I believed in serving our children properly. I believe in serving our vulnerable adults properly. I believe in tackling the homeless crisis, giving us proper highways. And that's why I'm very pleased to support this budget, because it puts extra money into all of those things.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Corden.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Our residents in Newport have suffered under austerity for more than 10 years now, yet somehow the government have managed to find money for, lovely little things like 1.7 million to decorate the Prime Minister's aeroplane. Imagine what that would do in Newport, 1.7 million. They've written off 100 billion of all of our money, taxpayers' money, on axed or dubious projects like, if you can believe it, helicopters. Now, runway Rishi, he's become recession Rishi, and again, all of our residents are going to suffer because of his decisions. Over here, we're investing in our city, we're delivering on the things that we said we would in our manifesto, and we're protecting our most vulnerable. We're doing the best for our city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Corden. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I do like this disattach between Westminster and Wales, especially when it comes to local budgets. But let's look at why families are really struggling now. They don't like the word cost of living crisis. We've got central government policies affecting energy costs for households living in Wales. They're struggling with those costs, and their energy bills have gone up £200 a month across the board. That's a Westminster policy. And that's because they don't want to hit the corporate big giants. They want to make ordinary people suffer. Then we move on to looking at mortgages. That's because they can't control inflation and interest rates. It's how people in Wales are suffering because of that. So there is a circle. What we're doing here is trying to make sure that the homeless people in Newport, that the vulnerable people in Newport, and that the people that really depend on us the most are being looked after. Our education is being looked after. That's what this budget is about. And actually to say that there's no link between what's going on in Westminster and the chaos that's happening all over the country, people have mentioned local authorities elsewhere, and try and deny that's anything to do with this is absolutely ridiculous. So they're quite happy to hit our residents across the board with huge increases in their household expenditures, and then they complain when we have to do it here to hold on to our public services. And that's the reality of what budgets are about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Mogford. All right, Councillor. All right, okay. Don't fight amongst us.
Thank you, Presiding Member. So I've sat here tonight and I've listened to this debate. I think one thing I have learnt is that whoever's in government, whether it's down there in Cardiff Bay or whether it's in London, they're all wasting money. That's absolutely clear. But what I will say to you now, you're going to put forward your 8.5% council tax increase, which you're entitled to do, and you will do it. But I will hold you to account about the roads that need to be repaired. Because quite frankly, the roads in this city are an absolute disgrace. Well, I'll give you that, Cardiff as well. They're not much better. Okay, I'll hold you to account on that. I'll wait for that school to be built in Bettis. Just remember those things. This is what you're promising. This is now what you're going to have to deliver. And the Cabinet Member for Education, it was not long ago in the Argus it was reported that the unions were angry with you because you hadn't given them ample funding and that they had unqualified teachers in the classrooms. I'll now hold you to account on that. I want to see that reversed. I want to see those teachers in those classrooms. I want those schools run properly. And if you don't do it, I'll be reminding you.
Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, David. I think you stole my thunder there. I think the residents are fed up of us blaming Westminster, blaming the UK government. We come here and we've got a job to do. And when people talk about the failure of the Welsh Government, I look at all your faces and you're as if they can't do anything wrong. It's all Westminster's fault. Yeah? There is a problem in Wales. You've got to acknowledge that. I'll give you the problems with Westminster. I'll give you that. There's a problem in Wales at the Welsh Government level. We see it every day. We see the bad press they get. We see the money that's wasted. As regards to the services we provide, we could do better. You know, I've got presentations I put together on the failings in our ward, on flooding, potholes. Potholes are repaired. A couple of weeks later, they're repaired again. Yeah? You wouldn't go to the dentist and have a fill-in and go back 2 weeks later to have another fill-in. You know, let's get our services under control. Let's get things right first time, and let's see if there's any savings in doing things properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I support the budget. It's right that we always prioritise our schools, social care and our most vulnerable. But years of austerity and lack of funding centrally have left us with an infrastructure maintenance backlog of 90.4 million. So when we've spoken about the 144 million that we have in reserves and how 4 million is just a bit of a let's just take that off. Our road infrastructure has a backlog of 90.4 million. And that's just one of our areas that is a risk in that revenue, in that capital investment budget. So I welcome the 500,000 investment into my service and onto potholes and other road infrastructure. Our residents often ask, what do they get for the council tax that they pay? This is a tangible investment into our city's infrastructure, so I support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. I can't see anyone else now, so I move on to the seconder. Did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Officer. It has to be noted that over the last 12 years, we've had to make over £80 million of savings. And this reflects the focus and the priorities of our national government, who've determinedly cut public sector funding whilst promoting their politics of austerity, and who recently crashed the economy, forcing up mortgage costs and increased the enormity of eye-watering debt. 14 years of Tory rule has seen cut upon cut to public services. With the astonishing inflationary rises we saw last year, along with increasing demand for statutory services, more than half of local authorities in England have recently admitted that they fear bankruptcy within the next 5 years. We are lucky in Wales. We do have a Labour government, which I am proud of, that has worked hard to protect local authorities from this Tory madness. Albeit, with better budget settlements, we still have nowhere near enough. We have not enough to give to our citizens who we want to support. Difficult decisions means that priorities have to be carefully considered and planned for. Our citizens have the right to a good quality of life, the right to access quality jobs, access outstanding education and be able to live safely within their homes. This is why we have strived to set a balanced budget, but what does come with this is an increase in council tax. Looking across Wales and the current state of play with council tax proposal increases, the cumulative average amounts to 8.25%. What this does not account for is the different starting points where the majority of residents across Wales already pay a higher council tax than our residents who live in equivalent banded property. What these residents elsewhere get is more funding available to spend on those things that really matter to them, which includes schools, social services, and particularly street cleaning and highway maintenance, where grant funding is minimal. The proposed increase that we are proposing will in the long term increase revenue and funding to improve Newport and benefit our residents. That's the intention, a better Newport. And for most residents, an increase of 8.5% equates to an increase of £1.50 per week. That's affordable. With this increase and the prudent planning and consideration of our budget, we're able to spend an additional £10 million on our schools. And this includes $300,000 specifically to support our schools, support our children who have additional learning needs. I welcome the plan to increase capital resource by $600,000, enabling a provision to prudently borrow and finance some of our key priorities, such as building a new primary school in Bettis that's urgently needed, much wanted, but not had been a part of our original plans. It will be funded and it will happen. I support this budget. Yeah. It's been carefully balanced and costed, with consideration being given to ensure we can deliver on our manifesto commitments. £400 million being directly spent on improving...
Sorry, Councillor Davis, can you start winding up your the 3
last
minutes?
sentence. £400 million being directly spent on improving Newport for its residents. No harebrained ideas, no one put at risk, just prudent planning, sustain and continue financing our local authority. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon the leader now.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member, and thank you, colleagues, for your contributions to the debate this evening. It's certainly been very interesting indeed. So I think in terms of being thankful for contributions to the debate, I'm sure the Conservative Central Office will be very pleased for all the Central Office speak we've heard here in this second part of the debate this evening. But the reality is, as colleagues have already mentioned, Conservative MPs and Conservative Council leaders all wrote to the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, to request greater investment in local government. We've got a crisis in this country, as we've heard, and the crisis is around funding for public services. It is absolutely critical that we continue to defend our public services here in Newport. The Prudential Code requires us to ensure that financial decisions are affordable, prudent and sustainable. The budget that we place before you today is exactly that. Thank you for your comments. I'd also like to record my personal thanks to the senior officer team here at Newport City Council for their hard work and their efforts in helping us and supporting us to deliver a budget in the most difficult of circumstances, a budget which supports the continued delivery of services across our city. Thanks also to all of the partners and stakeholders who responded to the consultation on our proposals. To the head teachers who met with us in person. To our scrutiny committees for their helpful feedback. To the Schools Forum. To our trade union sisters and brothers. And members of the public who've responded in writing, online, or who've attended the ward meetings in their communities. And once again, thank you officers, for supporting and facilitating those ward meetings, enabling our residents to come out and to actually engage in discussion on the budget proposals. I've been reflecting on the comments made in the Chamber tonight, and I've also reflected on the comments made by members of the public that actually have been balanced and fair. And I'd like to make reference to one such comment on council tax. This member of the public said, "I'm fine with the increase, but the money needs to go on services we actually use, such as improving roads." Colleagues, the proposals we have before us this evening actually do propose to deliver on that. And I'm sure that you'll all agree that this budget strikes that all-important balance. All across communities, people are fighting for survival. Local government is fighting for survival. Public services are fighting for survival. And as the finance settlement from the Conservative UK government firmly shows, the only survival that the Conservative government is interested in is its own. After 14 years of Conservative government, the gap between funding and need is so huge, that we risk the collapse of our public services. Colleagues, in the affluent society, the great political economist J.K. Galbraith highlights the stark choice that we find ourselves facing today. And I quote, "Private affluence over public squalor." Whilst private affluence may be the priority of the UK government, this Labour government, this Labour administration, and hopefully the next Labour government, will not allow that. Labour is here to protect our public services with all of our might, and this is what this budget does. We will protect our public services. We will invest, we are delivering, and we will protect for the people of Newport. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Leader. We move on now to the vote. Would all councillors please cast their votes now? Sorry? Four, sorry. Well, it's been a long night, isn't it? Would all those for? All those against? Eight. Any abstentions? Two abstentions. So it's carried. It's 31 for, 8 against and 2 abstentions. So the budget is being approved. Right, can we move on now to item 5, the capital strategy and treasury management strategy as well. Leader to present this report.
Thank you, Presiding Member. The next report on our agenda is the Capital and Treasury Management Strategy for 24-25. This is an annual report focusing on the Council's capital expenditure plans that have already been referenced quite considerably in our debates this evening, the financial impact of those in terms of borrowing and our investment strategy for the year. We as a Council are asked to approve both strategies for the year, including the prudential indicators and limits within them. It should be noted, Presiding Member, that both Cabinet and Governance and Audit Committee have considered the report in their most recent meetings. Governance and Audit Committee endorsed the proposed strategies with no concerns raised. It should also be noted that this version of the strategy has been updated to reflect the announcements made in Cabinet on the 14th of February in relation to additional annual sums investment and an increase in borrowing capacity. In terms of the report itself, there are a number of key points to draw Council's attention to. The 5-year capital programme is now managed on a rolling basis, meaning that a new year, 2028-29, has been added to the programme. The programme itself continues to reflect the challenging financial circumstances we're working within, and as such continues to compromise ongoing and previously approved schemes, as well as annual sums for activities such as asset maintenance and highway maintenance. Although there are no new schemes being included, the programme, especially in 24-25, is still significant and contains a number of the Cabinet's highest priority schemes. For example, new school projects, the Transporter Bridge, and new leisure and wellbeing provision. Beyond the £7 million new borrowing headroom recently agreed by Cabinet, there is no new borrowing headroom to be approved at this point. However, the programme does now include indicative new borrowing from 2027-28 onwards, which, if still affordable nearer the time, will be available to pursue new schemes, such as the next wave of school development projects under the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme. Until the point at which that new borrowing can be formally approved, it means that capital headroom, which is used to pursue new schemes or address cost increases on existing schemes, is limited to the new borrowing headroom, those amounts already held in specific earmarked reserves and uncommitted capital receipts. As a result, careful prioritisation will be required when making new commitments from the headroom, and every opportunity will need to be taken to boost it via one-off sources, so that we can continue to respond to emerging pressures as and when they arise. Although there's no new large-scale borrowing included in the last few years of the programme, previously and recently approved borrowing will be incurred over that time frame, and this will increase the overall capital financing requirement and the Council's level of debt. The borrowing limits proposed in the report take account of this, and the revenue consequence of additional borrowing is already budgeted for, following the budget investment made in 2021-22 and planned for 24-25. Therefore, the programme proposed is affordable, prudent and sustainable, based on current information and assumptions. Presiding Member, in terms of Treasury management, the report details the Council's approach to borrowing and investing. It confirms that the Council will still pursue an internal borrowing strategy by using available cash resources to defer external borrowing for as long as possible, and will only undertake borrowing in advance of need where there is a clear financial rationale to do so. It is important to highlight the large refinancing requirement the Council has during 2024-25, which will see a handful of large loans repaid and new loans taken out in their place. The strategies before us today reflect a prudent assumption of the capital financing cost that this replacement borrowing will result in. For investing, the Council will continue to prioritise security, liquidity and yield in that order, and will strike an appropriate balance between risk and return. A minimum investment balance of £10 million is still required, which is currently being met via 3 covered bonds investments and will continue to be the case for the next few years. The Head of Finance commentary within the covering report directly addresses the question of affordability, prudence and sustainability, and confirms that the proposed strategy and programme meet these criteria. I therefore move the report.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder? Happy to second. Do you wish to speak later if there's anyone wants to speak on it? No. Shall move to the vote. All those for? It's 100%. There's 2 over there that abstain. Yeah. Right. Any against? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, it's carried. Okay, thank you, Leader. Item 6, I think this is quite a nice report to present to Council tonight rather. Leader, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. The next report deals with the legislative requirement for Council to formally adopt the Welsh Government's Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rate Relief Scheme for 2024-25. This scheme is fully funded by Welsh Government and will provide a 40% reduction in business rates due by businesses that meet the criteria set out by Welsh Government. This scheme is set out in Part A of the report. The report under consideration also includes, in Part B of the report, a proposal to extend for 1 year the Newport City Centre Local Rate Relief Scheme. Initially, this scheme was introduced in April 2022 and was intended to finish after 2 years on the 31st of March 2024. This is a local scheme, fully funded by the Council. It provides additional financial support in the form of a 25% rate reduction for city centre businesses that operate in the retail, leisure and hospitality sectors. The Newport City Centre Local Rate Relief Scheme that we are considering is unique to the city centre. This innovative scheme is designed to assist existing businesses remaining viable and also incentivise new businesses to open in empty city centre retail units. I'm really pleased to report to colleagues that the plan has to date helped more than 100 businesses in providing additional financial assistance. We're very pleased that we've been able to make provision within our budget to extend this scheme and continue to support those businesses that we know, because we do listen to what they say to us, we know that they need this support and assistance. So I'm very pleased to present the proposals here today in this report, the first being to accept the recommendation about the Welsh Government Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Scheme, and the second to accept the Newport City Centre Local Rate Relief Scheme.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder?
Very happy to second.
Do you wish to speak? Okay. Are there any comments on the proposal? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Leader, that's very good news, and it's nice to hear. However, of course, the proof will be how many of those businesses remain, how many of those businesses thrive and go forward, and of course, how many new businesses this attracts to the city centre. So we'll hold off judgment on that now until we see those results coming forward, and hopefully those results will be good. But we'll be watching.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. Just to say how much I welcome this. I'm one of the councillors for the city centre. All measures which support our existing businesses there and encourage new ones to set up in the city centre that provide more facilities, more interesting retail experiences to be welcome. And, I'd encourage people to accept this and welcome it. Thank you.
Councillor Horton.
Having already declared my interest, I'm quite happy to speak on this. Being a business owner that is in receipt of this support, it is very helpful. And I'd also like to comment that through the links that I have with other businesses and other companies, some businesses which I would class as very, very strong are closing down some of their sites because of what is going on with the economy, the difficulty that they face within trading, and the high energy costs which are being forced upon us. So I obviously support the motion, and both Part A and Part B, but I think it's unfair to make comments and make comment about whether or not this is going to be enough to support the businesses which are in Newport. It's upon us as individuals to support the businesses within the city and the wider area. And I don't think we do enough of that. I think we spend too much time buying things online. We spend too much time with a bit of the out-of-town shopping that we do, and we don't actively support the city centre enough. I think we, as individuals, need to get out there a little bit more and keep that pound within the city, within our city centre, because if we do that, then it enables us as business owners within the area to employ more people, which then, again, invigorates more spending within the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bright.
Diolch. Well, just to answer the question, you got to see what's happening. Well, this very Saturday weekend, a brand new venture is opening in Newport City Centre, the Corn Exchange, a capacity for 500 people to come to the Newport City Centre, spend their money, and that's directly benefited from the council's budget here and the proposal. So I would think that's clear evidence that this is actually working and we're bringing people into the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Right, I think there's no other speakers, so we'll move to the vote. Will all those people for? Unanimous. Right, we move on to item 7 now. Questions to the leader. Time limit on this obviously is 15 minutes, and there's 2 minutes for each question. Councillor Evans. Sorry, Councillor leader's announcements. Getting carried away. Sorry about that.
Thank you, presiding member. Well, I don't know where to begin. So, the Mayor and I were honoured to welcome Her Royal Highness, the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, on a recent visit to Newport Ship and the Transporter Bridge earlier this month. They're both are key parts in the story of Newport. They show our heritage as a trading port and an industrial city. They evoke memories of the past, and amazing work is taking place so that they can be enjoyed and celebrated by generations to come. At the Newport Ship Centre, Her Royal Highness was given a tour of the works, from the initial excavation through to the current day, as well as future plans. She also became the first person to sign the centre's brand new visitor book. Students and professors from Cardiff University were on hand to talk about some of the artefacts that were found during the excavations and how these have been conserved. Her Royal Highness was also able to step back in time to experience what life was like on the ship, thanks to a virtual reality headset, which the project team has developed in conjunction with researchers at Swansea University. And I would like to pause at this point, colleagues, and actually pay tribute to our former councillor colleague, Charles Ferris, who was instrumental in the facilitation of this visit. So thank you to Charles for the work that he's done on that and the continued work that Charles does to really support our heritage assets here in Newport. Now, in addition to this, colleagues, as you may know, Her Royal Highness has a keen interest in engineering. So naturally, a visit to the city's engineering icon, the Newport Transporter Bridge, was a must. It was amazing to be able to include staff, volunteers, the Friends of Newport Transporter Bridge and local students in the visit, who were all able to share their involvement in our cultural gems. It really was a very wonderful visit, and I have to say the Princess Royal was incredibly interested in the work that everybody has been doing there. Now, sticking with our cultural benefits here in Newport and our tremendous culture that we have here. 4 years ago, and it was roughly about 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, I entertained a guest, and I was able to show a guest around the chambers, around our fantastic murals, to show them the Civic Centre, to show them our courts, the fantastic Art Deco building that we're able to work from. And it was really good to have the opportunity to spend time with that particular guest and have a look around and really help them get a sense of what this building's all about. And I believe somewhere there might be a photographic record of that. Well, I declined the invitation to go to Vaqueros for chips, even though Vaqueros chips are excellent. But what I would like to say, 4 years on, is a huge congratulations to Benji Webb, to Skindred, for their recent success in the MOBO Awards. So well done, Skindred. Well done, Benji. I hope you remember the tour of the Civic Centre. But what another great example of Newport being on the cultural map. We are buzzing, as Cerys Matthews said recently. So, really proud of a lot of our heritage and our culture and ongoing attributes of the city. And, of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention the fantastic efforts of Rio Dyer in the recent internationals, once again making the city proud. Now, colleagues, you might have seen our new electric street washer out and about in the city centre, harnessing the power of renewable energy to help keep the streets of Newport clean. Well, actually, I've got to tell you, I've seen it, because we were walking through town the other day, and there it was, an operative was actually cleaning the streets with it. So I'm telling you about something that I've actually seen. Now, this it's the latest addition to our electrical vehicle fleet, and we're currently trialling its use to see what impact it has on our cleansing schedules. This is really important because a lot of the queries that we get are around cleansing. So this has great potential for us going forwards, and as well as running on clean energy, the vehicle doesn't use chemicals, so reducing impact on paving while still delivering the same results as a manual jet wash. Now, what's really positive about this is that the compact nature of the vehicle also allows us to use it in areas such as subways. Using the street washer in key areas will also free up cleansing operatives to help us cover more of the city. Equipment like this is really important because it helps us tackle an issue that we know is important to our residents in a way that's better for the environment and the streets and help tackles the climate and ecological emergency. Now, in terms of getting out and about and seeing what's going on all across our city, I'm really pleased to say that Newport is set to get a new leisure experience with the development of Cosy Cinema in one of our empty retail units in Chartist Tower. I recently went along to see the progress on this project, which is due to open later this year. 15 pods are being created, which can accommodate up to 6 people for daytime film viewings, and overnight stays can also be booked. This venture has been a hit on 2 other sites, but Newport will be the largest venue so far and the only one that's indoors. Now, the business, started by former Newport RFC player John Calderley and his wife Sian, won the backing of 2 of the panel on BBC Dragon's Den, including former footballer Gary Neville. And we're so pleased to be able to support this project. This is an exciting development for the city centre, something different and new. And it will be great for Newport residents, but will also attract more visitors from further afield, which will inevitably benefit other local businesses. City and town centres are changing, and Newport is leading the way. The city centre is moving to a more vibrant mix of independent traders, shops, fantastic music, and hospitality venues and residential use. And yes, Councillor Fairweather, watch this space and do hold us to account for it. Now, we were delighted to work with the Newport Chinese Community Centre and Newport Live to bring a spectacular Lunar New Year celebration to the city centre earlier this month for the first time. Titled The Dragons Are Coming, the event featured performances, workshops and activities, all celebrating the spirit of the Lunar New Year. The city centre streets were brought alive with energy and excitement thanks to mesmerising lion dancers. And I know Mr Mayor was absolutely delighted with the performance of the lion dance at the Riverfront Theatre. All available on YouTube for anyone to watch, and I highly recommend it. But it was amazing to see families and communities come together, and we really hope that we're able to deliver more positive events like this in the future. Now, on the subject of being out and about, I had the real privilege to go down to Pill very recently and to have a look at the cultural hub that's been developed by the Newport Community Association. Oh, my goodness me. 2 years ago, this building was derelict. And to see it now is absolutely incredible. And it really is testament to the continued commitment of a number of key volunteers working so hard within the community to provide this facility for everybody. It's attracted support from our work with business in the community, and we are so very pleased that this derelict eyesore has been transformed into this wonderful community hub. So congratulations to everyone involved, and I know that we look forward to seeing it fully open very soon. In terms of congratulations, I'd also like to share with you that the Welsh final for the Rotary Youth Speaks was held on the 15th of February, and the standard was incredibly high. This is a competition for schools where students compete in a debating competition. St Joseph's intermediate team were runners-up, and Joe Wakeman of Year 9 won the best opposer. In the senior team competition, Phoebe Lonergan, Year 13 of Lamwern High, won the best proposer. These are our Newport pupils in a Wales-wide competition, out there debating, and what I think is really important to note, these are pupils who are educated in the state sector, doing incredibly well in what is seen to be the preserve of private sector education. So huge congratulations to the successful pupils in those teams. A massive, massive thank you to the teachers that enable that to happen. That could not happen without teachers giving their time to enable that to happen. So huge thank you to everybody involved within that particular competition. Now, colleagues, I'd like to turn to the environment. Plans to improve Tredegar Park have taken a major step forward with a proposal to buy the freehold of the parkland from its owner. Now, currently, the council leases the land for the purposes of providing playing fields and a recreation area for the city. But the lease does come with a number of restrictive conditions attached. Purchasing the freehold will give the council greater autonomy in developing the park in line with the wishes of our Newport residents. Now, as you may be aware, last summer, extensive consultation with residents was carried out regarding potential improvements that they'd like to see us make to the leisure offer in the park. Response to the survey was really good, with just under 850 responses received. And they reflected a strong community interest in enhancing the park's recreational offer. All of that consultation feedback is available online, so it's already been reported, and you are most welcome to look at that. And I can't tell you how important this is, because whilst we were leasing that land, there's always a risk that the lease may not be renewed at the end, that the current owners may choose to want to do something else with it, that we haven't been able to fully utilise it for the recreational activities that we'd like to because of the restrictive covenants on it. This is a great opportunity, but you know what it does, and you know what I'm most proud of? Purchasing this site, purchasing this land, the freehold of this land, protects this site in perpetuity for the citizens of Newport. Nobody can take it away. Capital funding for the project will come from Newport's allocation of the Shared Prosperity Fund and under the Communities in Place priority. And we are currently looking at how we can deliver the priorities identified in the consultation as part of the overall package of investment into the park. And yes, we absolutely are listening to what our residents have told us about what they would like to see there. So once again, Councillor Fairweather, hold us to account. Finally, colleagues, I'd just like to highlight an issue which you know has been an ongoing issue for us here in Newport for quite some time, but you'll be aware that we've faced a significant challenge due to ash dieback disease, which is predicted to infect almost 80% of ash trees in the UK. And sadly, following a survey, trees along 4 kilometres of Bullmore Road had to be removed, along with other trees that would have weakened as a result of the work. Now, I'm pleased to report that all those dangerous trees have been removed, and we really thank residents for their patience while this work was carried out, because we recognise the inconvenience that it can cause. We're now pleased to be working with a veterans charity, Green Task Force Cymru, to carry out replanting along the road. And colleagues, if I can just provide you with some assurance, whilst the road does look a bit bare, some trees, including hazel and hawthorn, will regrow from the coppice stumps that were left and should look very different in the spring and the summer. So I just want to provide that assurance. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Leader. Right, we move on now to questions. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. It's interesting to hear that you are looking at closing the Civic Centre for 2 days a week to save around £90,000 when your Welsh Labour government have given you around £500,000 to change some signs. The Wales Transport Minister, Lee Waters, said in a written statement on the 20th of February, there appear to have been some inconsistencies in the way highway authorities have applied our guidance to make exceptions. That is, to change the speed limit on some roads from the default 20 miles an hour back to 30 miles an hour. Yet the Council says it has consistently applied Welsh Government guidance. They can't both be right. A review has now been completed and an initial recommendation, including expanding and clarification of the exceptions guidance to help highway authorities take into account local context more fully. Lee Waters says residents should contact their councils to tell them if they think roads should return to 30 miles an hour. So, now that this revised guidance has been received, will you be leading the way, taking into account the views of residents to get main roads back to 30 miles an hour? And if so, how? Thank you.
Leader.
Why, thank you so much, Councillor Evans, for that question. I think the policy that you refer to with regard to this particular issue has been widely debated, hasn't it? Not just here in Wales, but across the whole of the UK. It's certainly caught the attention of the media and is something that continues to be debated. I think it's really interesting when we come to this particular topic, and if I recall correctly, within the last 6 months you've already asked me a question about this in terms of questions to the leader. However, I'm happy to repeat myself. So with regards to this particular policy, clearly the Minister has been gathering evidence in order to support his policy and actually better understand the impacts of it. Only recently we've seen a reduction overall in the average speed limits because of this. So we've seen drivers, the evidence is demonstrating that drivers are driving more slowly. And we know that as we move forwards in future, this will lead to a reduction in road traffic accidents and fatalities. So in terms of the impact of the policy itself, there is a growing evidence base which is starting to demonstrate the impact of it. Your question, however, I think refers to the application of the implementation of this. And you may recall, Councillor Evans, that when we've discussed this previously here in the Council, where you've asked this question of me, I actually said, although, surprisingly enough, it was misreported in the press, you'll find the video of the recording of the meeting and the minutes of the meeting where you asked me a question about this, where I clearly state that we will, as a City Council, actually review this. But what we'll do is we will continue to review this in line with the growing evidence base, and this will also be the evidence base that we collect at the local level. Now, I certainly received, through the Leader's Office, quite a few queries about this from members of the public, some expressing concerns, some not very happy about it, others actually welcoming the policy. So we will indeed consider the guidance that Welsh Government has now developed, and it's really helpful, I think, to have this further guidance from Welsh Government. It's good to hear that they're listening to the public and that they are considering how they may better implement their policy. Of course, here in Wales, we do have a different relationship to the relationship that exists between local authorities and central government in England. And so we meet regularly with the Minister. My Cabinet member meets regularly through the Cabinet Members Network. And of course, leaders also meet regularly with the Minister. And we'd be happy to listen to what the Minister has to say with regard to his exceptions guidance. Always happy to have a chat with the Deputy Minister, as we were when we went to the opening of the Llanelith station very recently. And I think it's very important that we listen to the Minister, but we also listen to our residents. We have given a commitment that we will continue to review the implementation of this, and we will review this going forwards. And this is certainly something where we will listen and take heed to the responses of our residents. And what's particularly good about this is the improvements to our website mean that it will make it much easier for our residents to engage with us on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Member, sorry. Leader, there's one subject that every member of this council picks up time and time again on the doorstep, and we can't ignore it any longer, and that's the state of the city centre. We've all been there a long time, we've all seen the decline in it, and it does affect the residents in Newport. Sometimes it's even thought of as an embarrassment. Could you possibly organise an all-members seminar where we can all sit in the room so we can all grasp the problems, what's being done and what the future is? I think we would all benefit from it, and I think it would be good for our members that we could go back and show that as a council that we are trying to address the issue. Thank you.
Leader to respond.
Delighted. Thank you, Presiding Member. So, I don't know. Would I describe the city centre as being in decline? That's certainly not what I see. I see challenges. I see issues. But we've been here already this evening where we've all of us voted, for the discretionary rate relief scheme that we put in place for our businesses in our city centre. Is it in decline or is it in transition? I would challenge that perspective, and I would suggest that it's a city centre in transition. Now, as a local authority, we have a number of powers which we are able to use to facilitate change and drive forward change. We've got our statutory powers, our regulatory powers, but we do have constraints, and those constraints are financial constraints. And when we look at Newport City Centre, what we actually see is a place where a lot of the property estate within the city centre is not within the public domain. It is within the private domain. Now, we've already got measures in place to try and address this, and we incentivise through grant schemes and loans. We've also got enforcement measures that we can take to address some of the challenges as well. What we need to do, however, is really consider how we can all be brand ambassadors for Newport, for our city centre, and how we can amplify, collectively and individually, the opportunities that exist here within Newport for our businesses. We can all do that, not just me, everyone. We've all got an opportunity to do that. So how do we find a way through this transition that actually helps to support businesses, that meets the needs of our residents. Well, we've made considerable steps towards this in recent years. There's a significant amount of housing within our city centre already. A lot of residential properties. And a mix there, a 10-year mix. Some are private ownership, some are privately rented, and some are social housing properties. We've supported the transition of our businesses. There's no greater transition than the transformation that has taken place in places like Newport Market and, of course, the iconic Mercure Hotel. And I've just reported to you this evening about another business that is coming into the base of that Chartist Tower. Regeneration doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, hard work and effort. But don't think that it's not happening, because it is. Look at High Street. Look at what's happened there. The market regeneration has been a catalyst for investment in that area. And as Councillor Bright's already mentioned, on Saturday we will see the opening of the Corn Exchange there as well. What's unique about that? What's unique about that particular area is that these venues are independently owned. They're community owned. It's not us owning them. It's people coming together and wanting to do that for Newport and for the benefit of the people of Newport. But you're absolutely right, Councillor Morris. You are right that this needs some sort of shape, doesn't it? We need a strategy for this. We've had a plan for the city centre, and we have delivered on most, if not all, of the objectives that we set out in that plan. But now is the time for change. So I'm really pleased to report to colleagues in the Chamber today that we have secured consultants to support us in taking forward the development of a placemaking plan for our city centre. And there will be significant consultation on this. And with no disrespect, colleagues, not just with elected members, because it's not just about us. We want to know what the people out there think, what our residents think, what our businesses think, and you know what, really importantly, what potential investors think. So we are just about to launch this developmental stage of the placemaking plan, which will give everybody, it's got far greater ambition than getting elected members in a room and finding out what they think. This is what finding out what everybody thinks. And we will be taking this forward very shortly. And I would remind you, colleagues, not that I have to, but I do feel the need, that this was a commitment of the Labour administration in the 2022 manifesto. So we are taking forward our commitment to the citizens of Newport, and everyone will have an opportunity to respond and engage with this consultation. And together, we will guide the transformation of Newport. Thank you.
Take the next question. Sorry? Take the next question. Right. Councillor Whitehead.
Point of order,
what?
Mr. President, member. No, I'm just going to ask, was that a yes, we'll organise a seminar? Because everything that you said... Everything you said, no other member had any idea these things were going on. And the point of having...
Alan, Councillor Morris, you need to ask the follow-up question in writing.
Right, yeah. That's about to say that. Please. Put it in writing then to the leader, please. What's the time?
Councillor Whitehead, I've paused the clock for that.
Yeah, we've paused the clock for that. So, Councillor Whitehead. I think we only got 2 minutes left anyway. Right. I don't know what's happened with Councillor Whitehead. No. Councillor Druitt, if you can be quick. Got 2 minutes.
Presiding member, in May 2022, this Labour group were elected by the citizens of Newport to deliver a manifesto based on community wealth building and social value. Can the leader provide an update to the Chamber on progress regarding the implementation of this and share any supporting evidence with members?
Can you be quick on this, please?
I can indeed, Presiding Member. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Druitt. We're committed to community wealth building, and we've made this strategic commitment. You can find this embedded within the corporate plan of the City Council. We're in a unique position as an anchor institution within our city to deliver on these commitments. And we've already started to do this. We're a living wage employer, but we also require those companies that work with us to pay the living wage as well. Through our procurement, we're able to deliver greater social value to our citizens, and I'd like to draw members' attention to a recent report to Cabinet where it was reported that in the first 6 months of the introduction of social value themes, outcomes and measures, we had secured for the benefit of our citizens in Newport benefits of almost £1 million. £1 million in 6 months. Imagine what we can do as we take this forward for the rest of this administration, making the most of our role as an anchor institution, delivering for our citizens here in Newport. That is absolutely tremendous. Now, most of these benefits, Presiding Member, are delivered...
Leader, you've got 1 minute, please.
They're making me laugh.
Right, we got 1 minute left, please. Try and be consistent here.
I can't look at... Right, okay. Right, for the first reporting period between May and October 23, right, almost £1 million of social value was reported. And what I really want to say is a large proportion of this total is made up by employees hired or retained to work on contracts that live in the boundary of Newport City Council. We've heard it already. Councillor Horton said about keeping the Newport pound going round in our city. And as an anchor institution here in Newport, that's exactly what we are doing for our residents. And I am so delighted, Councillor Druitt, that you chose to raise this issue here this evening, because this is of such importance. We should all be valuing what is happening here, because each and every one of us is part of this transformation and this recognition of the value and benefits we can bring our citizens.
Thank you, Leader. Right, we move on now to...
Point of order. For Councillor Routley, he has continuously degraded the leader a number of times, and it's not just this meeting. I know he's obviously said about yourself, but that also goes his way as well. So it should be decorum for all members. Thank you.
I take your point. Right, let's move on to... It's been a long night. Let's move on, can we? Item 8, questions to Cabinet members. There are 2 written questions for the Cabinet members. Question 1... Councillor Laura Lacey, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Assets. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Can the Cabinet Member report on the progress that she has made with regards to reviewing the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on all arterial routes in the city?
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. You've stolen my thunder. I'll give you the technical answer. Okay, so as you'll be aware from previous correspondence, Newport City Council has consistently applied the Welsh Government guidance when considering where the place criteria would dictate the defaulting of speed limits to 20 mile an hour and exceptions to where the 30 mile an hour limit should remain. The Deputy Minister for Climate Change has advised in local highway authorities that Welsh Government is reviewing how the place criteria has been used across the whole of Wales, with a view to whether the guidance is required by local government authorities in the accepting of certain roads. During November 23, a series of meetings to gather feedback on the application of exception guidance by Highways Authorities officers were held and led by the WLGA, which I was a part of. The aim was to gain better understanding of how the exception guidance had been applied, whether the officers had encountered any difficulties when applying it, and how that feedback had helped shape and revisions of the exception guidance going forward. Therefore, until the Welsh Government review is fully complete and revised guidance is received on the use of the place criteria in setting exception speed limits in Wales, there is no immediate plans to revisit the original assessment of the roads within the city, but as the Leader said, we will look to review this once it's received. I can provide a link to the recent Welsh Government statement, which includes preliminary speed data since the 20-mile-an-hour rollout, and any information on Welsh Government ongoing review in the exceptions process, which may be of interest. The headline from this statement, as the leader has already alluded to, that there has been a reduction in speed of 4 miles an hour since the implementation of the default limit. If you want the link, I've sent it to you.
Do you have a supplementary question to the reply you've had of the Cabinet member?
Yes, of course,
okay.
Because the Cabinet member seems to be at odds with what the leader just said. Because the leader says we will continue to review on a regular basis. And I did ask you what action you've taken, and I don't think you've taken any, which is going to be an absolute disappointment to the thousands of motorists in this city. Yes, let me finish. Let's just get on with it. It's going to be a disappointment to the thousands and thousands of motorists in this city who are sick and tired of these 20-mile-an-hour limits. And, you know, if you look, I drive to Cardiff 3 or 4 times a week, and I can tell you now that the arterial routes into Cardiff are at 30 mile an hour, and things are much better. And you really need to consider that here as a matter of urgency, Cabinet member.
Cabinet member, well, it would be better, I think, if you could give a written reply, actually.
I mean, if I can come back quite quickly, as I said, we're waiting for the full review. I'd like to maybe mention then a particular road in New Ward that you've asked to increase back up to 30 mile an hour, and particularly Western Avenue, where I know a number of residents on that road actually campaigned to reduce the speed down further. And again, they didn't want 30, they wanted 20. Are you knocking the doors of your residents' doors and asking them, the people who actually live on those streets, do they want those speeds, not the ones that are driving through there? It's not an easy process just to say, let's turn it to 30. We have to look at the residents that are living on those streets and to whether they want those roads or not. I can name 100 roads through the city centre where those people live, they do not want it at 30, they want it at 20. We are reviewing it. We're waiting for the Welsh Government guidance to fully do it properly.
Point of clarification.
It's not.
I can have a point of clarification because I've had emails from residents
please sit down.
Avenue,
Councillor Fairweather, please sit down.
Yeah.
Look, sit down, please. Write to the Cabinet member if you're not happy about what you've been told. Well, that's what you normally do then, is it? I don't know. Right. We move on now to question 2. Councillor Dimitri Patroni, Cabinet Member for Organisation Transformation. Councillor Mogford, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
With pleasure. The one thing I've learned tonight is that we're a listening council. I've been told so many times that people listen. So if you listen to the question carefully. In 2023, the Council's contact centre received 362 calls in the first 3 quarters of 2023. From July 2023, 1/3 of the callers hung up, right? Because they were fed up of waiting to be listened to or heard.
That's not what's been said. That's not what's being said here. You've got to read out what the actual question.
I'm just clarifying it so it's clear.
Put it. Please.
And from this point on, I will read out.
Well, you should. From that point on, you should read out what is exactly here.
I've just listened to
okay?
what you said. Okay. Could the Cabinet member share what measures have been taken to improve the service? Thank you.
With pleasure, Presiding Member. Thank you, Councillor Mogford, for your question, and it gives me a good opportunity to say what has been taken forward even before December 2023. As Councillor Mogford rightly points out, we regularly release this data into the public domain. We have nothing to hide and will be held accountable by yourself and the public accordingly, because what we expect and what all of us expect and the Council expect is an excellent service. At the moment, the average waiting time is 6 minutes and 52 seconds. We receive between 700 and 800 calls a week, and at peak times 1,000 plus. Particularly when there are changing services. So we're meeting the expectations of residents, ongoing and increasing expectations of residents on a weekly basis. In terms of actions, before December 2023, we commissioned a review into our contact centre, indeed our whole compliments and complaints procedure to ensure, and to independent, by the way, of us, of officers, of any elected official, to see how our complaints process was working, the response times, and whether we were meeting the expectations not only of yourself but of our residents. And we look forward to that concluding end of next month, tomorrow, from tomorrow onwards. And we had an interim review. I had a briefing in early February. I think it was the first of what were the interim results of that independent review. So ongoing action in this area.
Do you have a supplementary question to what the councillors, the cabinet members have said?
Yes, I haven't written it down though. Very professional answer, thank you, councillor. I was surprised by the large number of calls that do come in to the council. And I don't know the nature of these calls by breakdown. But my supplementary question is, this is a huge challenge to cope with this number of this demand. What are we doing to reduce, what other methods are we using to try to reduce these large numbers of calls? Thank you.
No, it's a very good question, Councillor Mogford, and we've got to increase the online use of them. We've seen online use, just over 80% of our new people who want to engage with the council are going online, 80%, which is really good, but we still see increasing demand and pressure. Part of that work is improving the website. I don't know if you noticed the new website, but that was led by me as a member, but some wonderful officers, well, doing some great work. That's phase 1. We're rolling out phase 2 to improve further bits of the website and the app to make it more efficient, speedier and more accessible to our residents, so they get the matters resolved quickly as humanly possible. I am determined to deliver that, and you can hold me accountable, and Falweather isn't here to say that, but you can hold me accountable to that. I will deliver it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. Thank you, Councillor Mogford. That concludes the business set out on the agenda. The date for the next council meeting is Tuesday, the 23rd of April, 2020.